Festive greetings, our legion of elves and reindeer. Welcome to Podcast The Storm, where social awkward snowmen and crazy stocking stuffers and all around naughty list members convene to talk and debate all things pop culture. With me, as always, is my co-host, the Jolly Holly Bookworm, aka the Authenticator, Dalton L. Mortimer.
Hello, everyone. We're finally in December. We made it, folks. The year is almost over. Almost.
Yes, and I am your host slash Santa Claus Burglar, the brainstorm pop culture. How's everyone doing tonight?
I am doing reasonably well. Could be better, but I'm doing reasonably well, and I'm glad to finally get into the spirit of things.
Alright, yeah, so December. I'll be honest. Part of me was not prepared for it for some reason. I don't know why.
That seems to be going around. I mean, my brothers are always sort of Scrooge-esque and Grinchy about it in general, but even my mom seemed a lot more tired than she usually is. I'm I'm hoping that once my brother gets home, um, he's currently living in Wyoming with his girlfriend, and he'll be home sometime probably middle of next week. So I'm assuming once the family gets going back together and everything, um, things will be off to the race. The important thing is that my Christmas list was actually done several days before Thanksgiving this year, and I already know what I'm getting Brainstormer this year. And the only reason that my brothers will probably be something I figure out later is because of the aforementioned they don't get into the spirit very well. So at least the parts of it that can be done are done. The things that are in my power to control have been successfully controlled for. Hooray. Which means that I don't have to panic and worry about doing things at the last second this year, hopefully. Depending on when my brothers get their act together and decide what they freaking want. Moving on, though. Because, as per usual, every year, or literally every holiday season, they try various ideologues of various kinds try to play virtue signal over holidays, and we have to come in and bitch slap them back into behaving themselves again. this week is going to be mostly a socialist/communist trying to co-opt the holiday week, most likely, and or social justice oriented trying to co-opt the holiday week. We will get into the more Bible thumping flavored stuff next week, probably. Because the one thing that both of these ideologies can agree on is we really need to have moral control over holidays. Derp.
While the rest of us get fucked over.
Yep. Because while we're jumping from one extreme to the other, trying to make these crazy moralistic ideologues happy, they miss the point of why holidays are worthwhile and good in the first place. Every fucking time. Anyway, speaking of, once more into the icy, wintry breach we go.
Alright. So yeah. It's originally from Medium.com. We all remember this one, this website at least, because it gave us a very wonderful and grand article that took us about 20 podcasts to finish.
Wait, was that on Medium?
They rebranded.
Oh, okay, that explains it, because I didn't realize that it was Medium that gave us the Rewriting Ripley article, which became our white whale for 4 or 5 frickin' years. But I guess I shouldn't be surprised then that they're coming out with this kind of stupid. You know, we haven't touched on the Mary Sue in forever and a day. I should check on the Mary Sue to see if they have any holiday-related feminist stupid to be rebutted. Anyway, on we move.
The War on Christmas is Racist and Xenophobic is written by Vina Moore, published December 17th, 2023.
I literally have absolutely no idea what they could possibly be bitching about with this article. Like, there are things to be said about the War on Christmas. Like I usually end up reminding everybody, it was the highly religious evangelical Christians that started the War on Christmas because it wasn't Christian enough. But I have absolutely no idea how and why, even from like a social justice mindset, it must be racist or sexist. But I suppose we can resolve that by proceeding. Next.
Or when Christians believe they are oppressed when they are the oppressors. Okay. Hey, okay. Hey, Dragon Turtle. Sorry, I just saw your comments. I was on the other tab. I am okay. So just to address that, for the record, yeah, I'm doing rather well. Wait, Dawn has mojo?
What now?
Hope you guys are doing well this winter season. I know at least Dawn has his mojo right now. Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, because bound to the Winter Queen, and therefore also bound to the seasonal cycle. And
sorry,
yes,
every time
both generally because I freaking love Christmas, and also yes because I am bound to the Queen of Air and Darkness. Yeah, the period between Halloween and Christmas is always when I'm on my A game. Usually.
Wait, did Dawn shave or am I being dumb?
I trimmed my beard recently. Yes, Dragon Turtle, you're not being
Holy
blind.
shit! I did notice. How recent? Because
week before last, I think.
Okay, I didn't notice that. That's my bad. All right. No, you're not okay. But okay, yeah, audio quality. That's because I don't use my. When the song is playing, I don't use the. I use the microphone in my computer than the one I'm using to talk, so people can hear the song being played.
Because otherwise, it causes all sorts of reverb shenanigans.
Yeah. So.
Anyway, on with the article.
Hmm. Um, the season of Santa is on every street corner. Unbridled capitalism and cheesy Hallmark holiday movies is well underway. In addition to those things, we have right wingers wailing that we must bring Christmas back to stop the war on Christmas.
I, okay, this may be one of those weird times where I'm actually at least partially on the writer's side here. Of course, it must be said that fuck your demonizing of capitalism. The reason why capitalism is so enthralled in holidays is because people like nice things in holidays, therefore, the people who want to sell them said nice things profit exponentially thereby. But it must be said that, and I've reminded people of this, basically every year, both because I think it's funny and because it's something that is important to keep in mind. The war on Christmas, insofar as it is one, was started by Puritan motherfuckers like Oliver Cromwell and Governor Bradford in 1659, I do believe. The point being, the group most responsible historically for any sort of war on Christmas is pompous, moralistically authoritarian evangelical brats who rejected Christmas on the basis that there's too much pre-Christian paganism in it. Because God forbid good things can come from a source that's not my ideology, derp. But yeah, I will give this person at least half a point for noting the thing that I always also note, which is if there can be said to be a war on Christmas, evangelical motherfuckers are the ones that started it because Christmas isn't Christian enough. Which, I mean, it isn't, but again, in my head, we should just be allowed to admit that good things come from sources other than the ones we predetermine for ourselves. But again, I'm weird like that, I guess. Moving on.
Yeah, I get you, Gianto. You're good. You're good. And I understand the problem with it. I just not sure what I can do on my end. I have a really old computer, so bear
Yeah,
that in mind.
it's kind of a miracle that Brainstormer's computer has held up the entire time we've been doing this show, considering that I think it was from like 2009, even when you originally got it. So by the time of 2019, it was at least 10 years old, and it might have been older than that if I don't remember right.
No, it was 2009 because the Word document program on here is Microsoft Word. No, Microsoft Word 2008. I got it
Ah,
I think it was 2015 because I know I wrote a novel on here.
okay,
That's
so
my time.
it was used even when you got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and yet somehow it manages to stay stable consistently enough for us to do this show, which is
Yeah.
kind of a miracle
Well,
in and of itself.
anyway, shall we?
Yep, moving on.
All right. I'm sorry, but when was Christmas ever taken away? The fact that people still put up Christmas trees, wreaths, and do other Christmassy things should be proof that no one has ever attempted to ban the holiday. Okay, clearly this motherfucker has not ever read a history book.
Yeah, again, I get the point is supposed to be to tell said right wingers to calm the fuck down, which is an admirable goal because they like to virtue signal over the holiday anyway. But the correct response to Derma War on Christmas is it's exactly this moralistically puritanical hyper Christian thinking that led to the original War on Christmas in the fucking first place, because after the Protestant Reformation, a bunch of crazy evangelical bastards decided Christmas was too pagan and not Christian enough, and therefore it should be banned. They did the same thing with Halloween. It was bullshit, and when they did it with Halloween as well. But we're focusing on the Christmas thing at the moment. Point being, the people most responsible for any war on Christmas are the very same people who hyperfixate on the religious aspects of it. And we owe most of the modern popularity of Christmas to people like Charles Dickens, who essentially reintroduced a lot of the pre-Christian aspects of Christmas in his book, The Christmas Carol, and so on. There's actually a considerable bit of scholarship to suggest that our modern definition of Christmas owes more to Charles Dickens than even to the Middle Ages. So a lot of people will kind of pithily or jokingly say that Charles Dickens invented Christmas, quote unquote. What actually happened was he reintroduced a lot of the pre-existing traditions that the church was trying to crack down on at the time, and inevitably people ran with them because those were the parts of the holiday people actually liked, but, I digress. Moving on.
The so-called War on Christmas had its origins nearly 20 years ago when right-wing television host Bill O'Reilly devoted a segment of his blockbuster weeknight program to Christmas Under Siege, as he complained that cities in blue states, as well as big corporations, were shifting to non-denominational signage like Happy Holidays. In response, he offered a laundry list of horrors: gay marriage, legalized drugs, taxes, and warned if the secularists can destroy religion in the public arena, the brave new progressive world is a possibility. Okay, well, fuck Bill O'Reilly.
Right, fuck both parties in this particular instance. But once again, I'm gonna have to be the checking the historical privilege dude here for a second and say, you think the War on Christmas only started 20 years ago? When in actuality, again, it started around the same time the Protestant Reformation got underway, because assholes like Oliver Cromwell thought that there was too much paganism in Christmas, and therefore Christmas should be banned, along with Halloween, Valentine's Day, and a whole host of other fucking holidays that make life worth living, but never mind. Point being, if you really want to screw over the hyper-religious radicals, my dear, it would actually benefit you to be more familiar with the actual history that you're supposed to be citing here. Because what seems to be happening here is a SJW and an evangelical arguing over who gets to play moral fag with regards to Christmas. And as someone who is both on neither of these teams and actually understands the history of the things he tries to learn about, fuck you, both of you are wrong. The parts of Christmas that work have nothing to do with religion and nothing to do with secularization. They have to do with pre-Christian polytheistic traditions that might even go back as far as animistic traditions, i.e., Christmas is older than Christ himself to begin with, or what we now refer to as Christmas, which is a conglomeration of Saturnalia, Yule, Sol Invictus, Mithra Festival, etc., etc. Like, there are dozens upon dozens upon dozens of Yule or winter festival names we can pull off from. And yes, we can even throw in Hanukkah, because, again, that probably has some ancient antecedents in pre-Judaic times. But that's neither here nor there. Point being, the things that people like and indulge in and enjoy about Christmas have nothing to do with religion and have nothing to do with secular critical theory bullshit. You both are wrong to try and moral fag over this, because, quite frankly, the parts of Christmas that people like are not the moralistic parts, they're the indulgent, celebratory, feasting parts and shit. Because God forbid anyone should have fun and let morality take a back seat for 5 fucking minutes. Moving on.
Alright, before we do, let me internal. Wouldn't the adult about Christianity without dunking on it a bit? Mostly a joke. Yeah, no. For the record, any hypersensitive Christians out there, speaking myself as a Christian, he gets a pass, by the way.
And for the record, I have no problem whatsoever with Christianity. Like, Christianity does have a rich tradition, and I don't mind learning about said rich tradition. I just get a little touchy when people try to pull the bullshit moralistic revisionist history thing. And it's especially ironic to me that the evangelical types have glommed onto the term war on Christmas when it's the exact same evangelical types that begat the first war on Christmas to begin with. Because rather than accept that some good things can come from polytheistic cultures, Oliver Cromwell and company decided it's not mentioned in the Bible, it's not Christian enough, and therefore we should ban it, even if it makes everyone happy and gives people a reason to fucking want to live. It baffles me, because sadly enough, if the evangelical side of the aisle got their way, Christmas as we know it would not exist. They literally tried to fine people for celebrating it back in the day. I don't know if it ever rose to the level of like an Inquisition style thing where you'd get tortured for celebrating Christmas or Halloween or whatever, but there were actual laws on the books that prevented people from celebrating it, at least from an official perspective, at the time. And therefore, I'm not going to give evangelicals credit for something that they actually tried to ruin repeatedly. Moving on.
Yeah. Also, Giant Turtle, no offense, but I do think it does live in your head free, not a lot, just like a summer home. You're not wrong.
It bothered me, and yes, you're not wrong. It does live in my head rent free somewhat, but that's because I consider Christmas to be one of the most awesome reasons to continue being alive. Like, part of the reason why we got in the habit of doing these theme months in the first place was because so many people were coming after Halloween and Christmas and Valentine's Day and Easter and every other freaking holiday. And I really genuinely love holidays, but I love them for what they are, not for what a bunch of moral fags try to make them. And I resent the notion that I can't defend Christmas from the overt moralism of evangelical Christians, the same people that tried to ban it back in the day, and I can't defend it apparently also from social justice. That's why I hardline stay on my little historical square here, because yes, it would be very easy for me to overstate the quote-unquote pagan antecedents of both Christmas and Halloween, and I try not to, which is why I focus and I try to hyperfixate on the historical context of the thing, because I don't want a bunch of Wiccans and neo-pagans trying to moral fag over Christmas or Halloween either. These traditions are older than any given religion that exists currently in the modern day, and we are erroneous to try and pin the good qualities of that celebration to any one particular moral system. The unique thing about these, long-standing holidays like Halloween and Christmas is that they have molded themselves to and adapted themselves to every era of human history that we're at least aware of. And I think it's worth noting that the things that stick around are not the censorious, self-sacrificial, moralistic aspects, but they're the fun, indulgent, feasting and having fun aspects. And I won't sacrifice that long-standing aspect of fun and celebration because one or the other type of crazy wants to moral fag over it. Moving on.
As it turns out, conservatives have long been losing the war on this issue, as only 64% of Americans today identify as Christian, while 3% are not affiliated with any religion, and 6% identify as non-Christians, such as Jews, Muslims, Hindus, etc.
Yes, but
This is in contrast. Hold on. This is in contrast to 1972, when 92% of Americans identified as Christian.
Mm-hmm. Okay. These numbers are like correct. They got the numbers right. Whatever. But again, I get the distinct feeling that this is to own the traditionalist chuds, and while on some kind of paper I can vibe with that because I don't particularly like the traditionalist chuds either, That doesn't mean I want Christmas to be secularized or social justicized, and that tends to be the battleground these people fight over. Is no, we want it to be evangelical. No, we want it to be secular. Blah 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 freaking blah. And meanwhile, those of us standing in the middle are just going, the part that matters is the part that is predating all of this shit. What the fuck are you guys doing? Let Christmas be Christmas and let people have fun and celebrate and shit. And the same goes for Halloween and Easter and Valentine's Day, etc., ad nauseum. That's why we do the theme month thing, because every year some new variant of moralizing twat comes along and tries to claim this holiday in the name of their ideology. And every time I will freaking shoot them and burn their flag, metaphorically speaking, as when I need to. Moving on.
Okay. During Turtle, I also don't think putting your morality aside for a bit of fun to have is the right way to frame it. That's like saying, yes, this is bad. We are just going to compromise our morality a bit, rather than it's perfectly moral in moderation.
Okay, but to meet pedantry with pedantry here for a second. The reason I frame it that way is because these sorts of people conflate morality with moralism, like authoritarian moralism, and so they actually do need to be told that some good things, like qualitatively good things, are not bound to their moral system, because it's this moral myopia that they have that is the problem. That's why I frame it in the way I do, because conceding that this even should be a moral issue is something I don't want to do. Because the second it becomes a moral discussion, then we're right back to square one of various factions moral fagging for the sake of laying claim to the holiday. And my whole point is that the parts of these holidays that are important don't bend themselves to one or the other particular moral system. They predate most of these moral systems because they frankly probably predate our status as a species. Like there were probably like fucking Neanderthal antecedents to Christmas and Halloween and all the other relevant holidays. And that's why my standpoint is you need to get the fuck over your morality and realize your morality is not the center of the universe, and that good qualitative things can come from outside of your framework. Moving on. Sorry if I spurred at you there, DT. But again, like I said, I was essentially meeting pedantry with pedantry on that point.
This insistence by conservatives that we should preserve Christmas at all costs and that we should only wish people Merry Christmas is simply code that white supremacy must be maintained no matter what. What the fuck?
Yeah, okay. Now comes the part where I'm going to wind up defending Christianity a little bit. You do realize the Abrahamic religions come from the Middle East, right? Like how? Okay, again, most of the religions that are relevant to this particular holiday, if we're seeing them through my hashtag religious lens, are from the Middle fucking East. And they only became popular in white European countries because of the latter days of the Roman Empire. Now, we can have a sensible discussion about how the conversion to Christianity kind of nerfed the Roman Empire and made the decline happen all the more, but this is a separate issue. Point being, in order for Christmas or the Abrahamic religions to be an artifact of white supremacy, you basically have to entirely ignore the fact that the Abrahamic religions are Middle Eastern in origin. And ironically, usually in these kind of social justice articles, we get bitched at because Jesus is portrayed as a white dude when he would have been Middle Eastern, and Santa gets portrayed as a white dude even though he was from Turkey. By which I mean Nicholas of Myra, the eponymous Saint Nicholas, was actually Turkish. But that's that's neither here nor there. Please, for the love of fuck, explain to me what you mean by white supremacy, because it doesn't appear to track onto this thing we call reality.
Moving on. Or...
Yes, moving on.
Okay, I just wasn't sure. All right.
Yep.
Why do I feel that this war on Christmas is a demand that white supremacy be upheld? For one thing, many of the people who insist that there is actually a war on Christmas are white conservatives. Also, even though the person who founded Christianity, Jesus, was actually brown, white oppressors eventually co-opted the religion and twisted it to justify their invading the lands occupied by black and brown people by rape, genocide, and stealing their resources. Okay.
Yeah, no. And again, this would have been an excellent point for you to bring up the actual history of the war on Christmas, and you could even lay it at the feet of evangelical, because in that instance they would actually deserve pushback on this front. But because you have your like conceptual framework trapped in, daytime news programs on the mainstream media, you completely missed the strongest argument you have against the evangelicals, which is it's ironic to hear evangelicals bitch about the war on Christmas when they're the ones that started it and began it. So, like, again, I'm with you on this point. I'm with you on the point that we shouldn't religiousify Christmas, because most of the parts of Christmas that actually, are worth preserving have nothing to do with any one religion. But in order to do that, you would actually have to know a bit about the history of the thing you're talking about, and you apparently think that the war on Christmas, quote unquote, only started 20 years ago. And again, I'm sure Oliver Cromwell is spinning in his grave right now, because you're basically giving all the credit for shit that he and Governor Bradford did. Governor Bradford was, I believe, the governor of Massachusetts um, when the first European colonies were founded, and he was another one of those evangelical whack jobs that tried to ban Christmas and Halloween. But point being, like, the easiest way to refute this war on Christmas bullshit is to say, you guys are the ones that started it. Stop trying to over religiousify everything. But you can't do that because you don't know enough about the history of the thing you're talking about in order to make that point. And so now I'm left in a situation where I have to both defend and refute Christianity simultaneously because you're being such a moron. Moving on.
During these guys look at art, culture, ideology, etc. as a social control mechanism, so Christmas is just a battleground and tool for them.
Yeah, and again, this is something that both sides are guilty of, and something I want both sides to get the fuck over in like extreme haste here. But until we fucking throw the moralists out of society altogether and completely defrock both versions of them, we're going to be sitting here for several years to come just to bitch at them for trying to appropriate something that is older than either of their perspectives. Anyway, moving on.
All right. I forgot to finish that paragraph. There's like one sentence left. These oppressors also usually force their black and brown subjects to convert to Christianity by violence because their ancestral religions were deemed savage.
That's a massive fucking oversimplification there, my friend. Not to mention, much of the African diaspora survived under the guise of Christianity because of things like hoodoo, voodoo, conjure, etc. Like, it's not as if we don't still have the Loa, the Orishas, um, several religions from the like African diaspora and so on. Like, if it was indeed their goal to convert everyone to a new religion, as is usually the case, the stuff that was worth keeping from the old religion, or at least a large chunk of it, wound up being incorporated and reflavored. under the new religion. Which again, this would have been an excellent point to make, to talk about how the newly Christianized Romans did the same thing with the Celts and the Norse and the Germanic tribes and so on and so on and so on. But that would, of course, once again, require you to actually know what the fuck you're talking about, and you don't, so you suck. Moving on.
Additionally, the narrative of radical left-wing forces attempt to outlaw Christmas serves to perpetuate the idea that Christmas should be the only holiday that's celebrated during the winter, which once again serves to uphold white supremacy. So if you celebrate Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, Yule, or some other winter holiday that isn't Christmas, you're either an evil heathen or aren't worthy of acknowledgement whatsoever.
My sweet person, you. There is no need to particularly differentiate Yule from Christmas, because most of the worthwhile parts of Christmas come from Yule in the fucking first place. Which again would be an excellent point to raise against people who are trying to make a right-wing war on Christmas, and once again would dovetail very neatly with the idea that it was in fact highly religiously motivated evangelicals who started the war on Christmas in the first place because Christmas wasn't Christian enough. But again, that would require you to know what in all the fucks you're talking about, and you know nothing. And since you know nothing, you are making a complete pig's ear out of this entire arrangement. Because you are arguing from a position of ignorance against people who themselves are arguing from a position of ignorance, and I must now sit here and become increasingly exasperated because it's two morons arguing over something they shouldn't even be arguing.
Giant Turtle, do people even celebrate Kwanzaa?
Some people do. It's a very niche thing because, as I'm sure most people are aware, Kwanzaa is a very new quasi-religious holiday that was started during like Jim Crow and shit. But that's neither here nor there.
Hold on. Well, he was just asking. Also, not sure you can lay that last one at the right's feet. They are all for using fiction to reinforce values, but not as its only purpose, and see culture and ideology as having inherent value themselves. Hell might even just be exclusive to the Hegelian left and its post-modernist offshoots.
It's complicated, DT, because yes, you're right. There are people on the ostensible right who will make an argument for cultural validity and shit. But there are also the Bible-thumping traditionalists who think that if I can't Christianize something, it must inherently be evil. Derp. So yeah, I once again would rather just call out both sides for being stupid. And let's be real here. Thanks to the influence of Carl Jung on Jordan Peterson, there are certain aspects of the right that are just as postmodern and critical theory woo related as the left, because this is something complete sidebar here, but this is something that's always bothered me about Jordan Peterson. He will rant and rave and wax lyrical about how evil the neo-Hegelian or culturally Marxist people are, but a lot of the Jungian psychoanalysis and Jungian archetype theory that Jordan Peterson swears by as if, his life depended on it, is also born out of that same Franco-German way of approaching things in the late 19th and early 20th century. That's one of the things that kind of frustrates me about Jordan Peterson, because he is, in many ways, a quote-unquote cultural Christian, and yet he won't just admit that he believes in Christianity from like a Jungian approach or a Jungian perspective. It's fucking irritating, because like every time you mention God to Jordan Peterson, he starts dodging the question. And from, several hours worth of watching the dude, I can almost guarantee you that he validates Christianity and or the Christian conception of God from a Jungian perspective. But if he admitted to that, then all of the actually religious people who subscribe to him or who support him probably would have a few bones to pick with him. But at the same time, my principles look at that and go, at least be honest about your beliefs come hell or high water. Isn't that what you always claim people should do? Anyway, Jordan Peterson and his, infecting the right with Jungian bullshit aside, um, there are of course multiple factions on the right and the left, so there are certainly people who would subscribe to Christmas whether or not it was proven to be Christian or not, but there are also people who need to historically reframe everything.
Charles says, if it is in the Bible, it's evil. It's still different from morally and culturally. Morality and culture are just things we make up arbitrarily to control people, and I want to control people.
This is true, although in a lot of ways I would argue that the only difference there is that there are some people who don't realize that's what they're doing. There are of course many, especially on the evangelical side of things, that do use Christianity as a moral bludgeon to control people, whether they realize it or not. But anyway, moving right along.
These people conveniently forget that since white settlers occupied what they came to call the United States, the First Amendment has promised religious freedom. In fact, the country doesn't even have an official religion. The main reason why so many of us assume that the United States is a Christian nation is because it's the faith that predominates. Okay?
Okay, that is actually like half of a fair point. Fair enough. And yes, people do very much seem to forget that being a Christian majority country does not make the Americas a Christian country or set of countries. So there's that. That being said, social justice / like critical theory based leftism doesn't have much of a leg to stand on either, because the belief in a social construct in all cases, blah blah, is also fundamentally foobar. But I digress. On move.
In this alleged war on Christmas, religious conservatives insist that Christmas should celebrate the birth of their Savior, Jesus Christ, on December 25th. Their narrative ignores the fact that many people who identify as Christian, as well as many non-Christians, don't regard Christmas as a religious holiday, but as a cultural one where carols, movies, feast, and gift exchanges are emphasized over celebrating the birth of Jesus.
Okay, again, half of a decent point that's utterly fucked by the context of where you're coming from with it. But again, even reducing it down to but my culture is oversimplifying it to some degree. Again, one of the remarkable things about holidays like Halloween, Christmas, Easter, etc., is their ability to mold themselves to whatever society needed them to be at the time, while still maintaining the actual spiritual content of those same practices. And so I'm not going to give the secularists any more credit than I'm giving the Christians on this point, because Christmas isn't wholly secular or cultural either. It goes back to pre-monotheistic spiritual and religious traditions. However, it was also so common among various different types of traditions, or various different types of polytheistic spirituality, that it's wrong to even say that pagans should be laying claim to Christmas, because that would also be an oversimplification and a lie. The issue is that these traditions, quite frankly, probably predate the invention of language, let alone culture. Like, we were probably celebrating these kind of solstice festivals and so on before we were even fully human beings. You could probably find some Neanderthal somewhere buried with stuff that's related to an ancient precursor to this shit. And if it's older than we as humans, maybe everyone should just stop trying to thrust their flag into the hill of these holidays and just let the holidays be what they're always intending to be. Moving on.
General, that depends on your definition. I'd say the majority of your nation has a certain belief and operates on it, then it is. Not having it in law just means they aren't a theocracy.
I mean, okay, I suppose if that's how you want to categorize it, DT, that might make sense. I would argue that if you're not making policy prescriptions or founding laws on a given religious ideology, then you can't really claim that the nation itself is inculcated with that ideology. As one of the reasons why one of the smartest things the founders of this country did was separation of church and state, and given how uncommon it was when America first did it, I'd say I'd give credit to the founders on that point, because theocracy or no theocracy, for the longest time, most countries did weave religion into their policy prescriptions. Anyway, moving on.
All right. Those people lament the de-emphasis on celebrating Jesus' birth and the religiosity. No.
Religiosity, yeah.
Okay. Has increased in our society. However, much of the root of the Christmas holiday isn't actually Christian at all. Many Christians are unaware that things such as mistletoe, Christmas trees, as well as gift giving have nothing to do with the birth of Jesus Christ. Those traditions are pagan in origin. Early Christians hoped to convert pagans into Christianity by incorporating some of their traditions while promising them that they could continue to practice them as before.
Yes, and that is arguably the first actually meaningfully true thing you've said throughout this entire article. Well done. Why wasn't this your first point of attack? Also, you really could have done a number on said evangelicals if you remembered that people like Oliver Cromwell are the ones who started any particular war on Christmas. Which would have been where I would have gone with this argument, because that literally tells everyone that the same evangelicals trying to keep Christ in Christmas are exactly the same people who tried to ban Christmas because it wasn't Christian enough. Moving on.
Additionally, many people argue that December 25th wasn't Jesus' actual date of birth. The date just corresponds with the last day of the Roman pagan festival Saturnalia, which celebrated the Roman god Saturn, the god of agriculture. It's argued that because there were no animals in the manger where Jesus was born, as he was born in the evening, it's more likely that he was born during the spring or summer.
Yes. Also, you missed Norse and Germanic Yule as well. Yes, there's some overlap between Saturnalia and Yule, but they are technically ostensibly separate traditions. But yeah, December 25th is one of the last days of Saturnalia, and it's also, I believe, the third or fourth day of Yule. If we're giving credit to everyone who contributed here. Moving on, though. Unless we lost Brainstormer somehow.
No, sorry, I was just checking to see if we had any new new things on chat, but we're good.
Okay.
All right. The common explanation for why early Christians chose December 25th as Jesus' birthday is because it's exactly 9 months from the date of March 25th, which is the date that Jesus was crucified. The early church likely believed that Jesus was conceived and died exactly 9 months apart for the sake of expediency.
I've run into that rationale a couple times, but I've never put much stock into it because, again, it probably isn't a coincidence that both Yule and Saturnalia and Sol Invictus and the Mithra Festival all terminate right around that time. Like, once one parallel is a coincidence, like 5 to 7 parallels is most definitely no longer a coincidence. God damn it. But even then, why in the hell would you correlate Jesus's birthday and his death day rather than? I guess you could make the argument for some kind of divine symmetry thing where Jesus was conceived around the same time he would later be crucified, but even from a religious Christian perspective, I don't see how you can make that work in your head. Anyway, moving on.
By that logic, is it a coincidence that they occurred at the same time as each other? Drench will ask.
I mean, I would say no, because I believe that there's a metaphysical reality underneath these, or at the very least, if we want to be entirely secular about it, there's probably some evolutionary psychology type thing going on where humans in general always get depressed and shit around the midpoint of winter, and therefore they concoct celebrations in order to counterbalance that. But again, I'm coming at it from a magical perspective, and I have no problem believing that there are underlying metaphysical realities here that have nothing to do with any one particular religion. And that if there's an evolutionary psychology component, it's probably because of the metaphysical realities therein. Because insofar as metaphysical realities can impact the real world, then of course they would also impact our evolutionary psychology, because they would be an evolutionary pressure. People that can notice the metaphysical shifts or changes in energy would have a better time surviving in a agricultural society or a Paleolithic society than ones who could not. So, duh. But that's just me. Moving on, though.
Okay. You give them a pass, but you give the cynical explanation for Christianity, just saying, and yes, they try to absorb a lot of pagan stuff. So did the Romans, so that would affect Saturnalia.
This is also true, but unfortunately, we know that this wasn't just a one-off strategy that the Romanized or the Christianized Romans employed. They did it with pretty much every major holiday that we still celebrate, and that's why so many ancient traditions got Christianized and then later secularized, and then we wound up rediscovering their polytheistic origins and shit. I'm not saying that the Middle Eastern, Christians, the first generation or so of which, didn't have some equivalent, because we know that the Jews, at the very least, had a December, solstice adjacent festival. That's why Hanukkah is a thing. So I'm not saying that it can't also have come from a genuine place. I'm just saying that we know that this was a tactic that they employed because they employed it consistently with what was Samhain and is now Halloween, with what was Yule or Saturnalia and is now Christmas, what was Beltane and is now Easter, etc., and so on. But yeah, it is worth noting that at the very least we know that it wasn't just a spiritual consideration for them. They actually did it on purpose. And yes, if we had more records of polytheistic times, I'm sure we would have more evidence of different types of polytheism conflicting with one another and co-opting each other. Because there's at least some argument to that with regards to the fact that every polytheistic religion and or mythology has the ancient primordial deities being unstable, then giving rise to the intermediary period, and then giving rise to the more civilized, secularized gods at the end of it, which suggests to me that the ancient Aesir Norse probably did originally worship the Jotun. The ancient pre-Olympian Greeks probably did originally worship the Titans, and then back further into the primordials. And the ancient Celts probably did, at least at some point, worship something analogous to the Fomorians, because my standing theory is that this generational aspect to deities in polytheism is what happens when you take the religiously co-opting for war reasons aspect and apply it to a polytheistic system, because there's no need to demote or defrock entities in a polytheistic framework, but you can make the argument that pre-existing gods or pre-existing spiritual forces were more primal and unstable, and possibly also more vicious, and therefore we should convert to this new pantheon of gods. Again, the switching from the Jotun to the Aesir, switching from the Titans or Primordials to the Olympians, switching from the Fomorians to the Tuatha De Danann, etc. And again, there's also the little canard of there's probably a metaphysical reality in here somewhere, and therefore, away we go with that again. Moving on.
Okay, so the next time a avowed Christian declares that a holiday like Kwanzaa is ungodly or otherwise illegitimate, they should be reminded that Christmas isn't divinely ordained either, and never has been. People co-opted some of the traditions we now associate with Christmas from other religions and made up other traditions over time, such as the kissing under the mistletoe. It's no more or less illegitimate than any other holiday. When people claiming to be Christians get offended over the greeting Happy Holidays, it shows how racist or xenophobic they are when they can't show basic respect to other cultures and religions. Christmas, much like Christians, much like other privileged people, are used to being our society's default and aren't used to having their existence or traditions questioned. Now that hold on, last sentence. Now that non-Christians are asking to be acknowledged and represented, Christians feel as though this request for equity is oppression.
Are there some crazy delusional evangelicals who think that way? Sure, but I think it's a very much smaller minority than you're thinking it is. Also, though, saying that it's not divinely ordained in some way is silly, considering that, again, these things are either a metaphysical universal or an evolutionary psychology universal in basically every culture. Also, I forget the rest of what I was going to say. Fuck me. What was I had another point and I was gonna make it, and now I forget what it was. Fuck. Shit. I don't remember. I don't remember what the second thing I was gonna say was, and now I'm annoyed.
It'll come to you if you don't focus on it.
Can you read that part again so I can have a good
Yeah.
chance of maybe jogging my memory here?
Okay. Do you want me to read the whole thing?
Yes, please.
Okay. When people claim to be Christians get offended over the greeting Happy Holidays, it shows how racist or xenophobic they are when they can't show basic.
Okay, now I remember. Can we for a second talk about the whole Happy Holidays quote unquote controversy for a second? Because when I was growing up, my perhaps naive youthful brain thought that the reason we say Happy Holidays is because there are 3 freaking holidays, one right after the other, in like the space of about 3 months. Halloween, Thanksgiving, and Christmas, and New Year's all come around the same time. In my head, there was no supremacy one way or the other of saying Happy Holidays. It was simply an acknowledgement that the number of holidays we speed through in the latter 3 months of the year come and go very, very fucking quickly. Like there's usually less than a week between Christmas and New Year's, for God's sake, etc. Or actually, I think it's more like a week and a half. But you know what I'm saying. In my head, again, maybe I was being naive growing up in the 90s and 2000s before all this politicization shit happened, but my rationale for saying happy holidays was always there are multiple holidays all one right after the other in this time period, so it makes the most sense to call this the holiday season because there's 3 or 4 freaking holidays at once. And if it includes people who celebrate Hanukkah or Kwanzaa as well, then so much the better. But point being, I never saw the greeting happy holidays as some kind of anti-Christian statement because there were 4, 5 freaking holidays at once in the latter part of the year. Also, what makes this part of the year awesome, mind you, but that was always my rationale when I was a kid was, well, yeah, there's 4 or 5 freaking holidays one right after the other. So obviously, that's the encompassing them all greeting instead of being particular about it. But maybe I'm weird.
All right. Yeah. To be fair, when I was hearing happy, I'll address the comments, Giant Turtle, in a sec. Give me a sec. When I heard happy holidays, I thought it was always assumption with Kwanzaa, Christmas. This is a third one, I think.
Hanukkah.
Thank you. Yeah, I thought it was just reference to those ones because they all happen within the same month. To be fair, I always prefer saying Merry Christmas just because I think it rolls off the tongue better. It has nothing to do with anything else. That's just really it. Like a personal preference.
Yeah, I don't particularly care one way or the other because in my head, Christmas is not particularly heavily religious anyway. Because of the aforementioned, it's yeah.
I agree. For me, my own personal preference is like it just sounds. It sounds better. Like I don't know. Happy holidays. To me, it just doesn't roll off the tongue as good as Merry Christmas. Maybe it's just me.
Yeah. No, I get what you're saying. I can see how it wouldn't roll off quite as well. But honestly, the only time I even notice whether I'm saying Merry Christmas or Happy Holidays is if someone makes an issue of it, because I tend to just sort of use them interchangeably. Because it really just depends on what is on my mind at that particular moment. If someone makes a thing of it and, flip shit, then by all means I will alter my greeting accordingly. But seeing as Christmas is a grab bag of a bunch of traditions that predate Christ and possibly also monotheism to begin with, saying Merry Christmas to me isn't even a particularly religious statement because, being as I know a lot of the history of this holiday, the idea that Christians think that somehow uniquely belongs to them is somewhat silly to me. Moving on, though.
Giant Turtle. I'll read the one you just made. Part of it was because I was watching Fox News back then, but I always saw Happy Holidays as a r/atheism crusade.
Oh. I can understand how you might get in that headspace watching too much Fox News. But yeah, it was mostly just a neutral thing for most of my childhood. Because again, there are 5 freaking holidays that come out around this time, and they're usually one right after the other. And there's also the 2 smaller ones like Hanukkah and Kwanzaa to consider too. So like, to me, it's just this is the time period where for some reason we put all the holidays. So it being the holiday season makes perfect sense to me. Now, I actually once saw a video by T.J. Kirk, the amazing atheist, saying that we need to separate out holidays because having 5 of them in the latter 2 months of the year is uneven or something. And he was advocating that we move holidays around based on convenience, I guess. And I ended up both cringing and laughing at him because obviously if he knew anything about these holidays, he would know exactly why they are where they are. But of course, TJ, being a pompous prick, as TJ is wont to be a pompous prick. He probably neither knows, and even if he did know, he probably wouldn't care. So, fuck him. Yet another reason to discount the opinions of the Banana Man again.
Okay, so Drentrell, the irony is that these people seem to get really xenophobic when they see a culture besides modern Western major city that isn't hollowed out into a fashion or a political mouthpiece. God forbid it also be something of the privileged, like East Asia or Orthodox Jews.
Yeah, they do get their culture, quote unquote, is like dogmatic secularism, and the idea that anyone believes in these religions as more than just a cultural fad or a political mouthpiece flummoxes them entirely. It's one of the reasons they constantly feel the need to virtue signal for Muslims, and yet when a fundamentalist Muslim does something Muslim, they're shocked surprised. And yes, I know there are plenty of reasonable Muslims all throughout the world who mostly just have to keep their mouths shut in the hopes they don't get burned at the stake for or jihaded for saying something wrong. And I feel bad for those people. I do, but let's not act like most of what is called the Muslim world is not some variation on a quasi medieval fucking theocracy at any given moment. There are Muslims that I hope prevail in trying to reform their religion, like Imam Tawhidi and Majid Nawaz. Although I'm not sure if Majid Nawaz even does much of the reforming Islam anymore. But there are plenty of Muslims who are reasonable people and would be perfectly fine and comfortable with being incorporated into a secular society. But the ones that are the true believers tend not to be those. And I don't particularly fancy getting castrated because I'm gay, or getting beheaded because I'm a practitioner of magic, or getting beaten to death with rocks because I'm disabled, because for some fucking reason these people still operate on the medieval premise that if you have a physical deformity, it's because of a deformity in your soul and shit. But yeah.
Okay. Giant Troll, it's more because who doesn't celebrate the secular parts of Christmas in the West? Christmas is about as associated with Coca-Cola as with Jesus, so to this day it seems unnecessary.
I mean this is also true. I mean, I'm sure we all know of people who are atheists who still celebrate Christmas because Christmas is awesome. And by the way, as far as I'm concerned, they're doing shit right. Because you shouldn't have to force any particular holiday to ideologically conform to your shit in order to celebrate it. If it is fun and gives meaning to your life, then who the fuck cares? As far as I'm concerned. It's also why I'm kind of an unusual polytheist, because quite a lot of modern day quote unquote pagans try specifically to differentiate Yule and Christmas. Whereas my thing is Christmas is already like 80% Yule, Saturnalia, and other assorted solstice festivals anyway, so why in the fuck are we differentiating them? Like, as far as I'm concerned, the quote unquote pagans of today should just put their feet up and crack a metaphorical cold one, because they've already won this particular battle. And it's not like the days off you would get for Yule are that much distinct from Christmas anyway. The only possible difference is you might want the 21st off as well as the 24th and 25th, but I digress.
Giant Troll, the radicals are often state-funded, like the race groups Iran funds, or the radical preachers Saudi Arabia are sending to Europe.
This is also very true, and again, I have nothing but respect for reasonable, sane Muslims who don't want to castrate me, stone me, or behead me. But unfortunately, quite a lot of the most vocal voices in the Muslim world are precisely the people who would have to do some weird game of rock, paper, scissors to decide whether I was going to get stoned, beheaded, or castrated, or all three. So yeah, and like I often bring up, I tend to respect most of the magical aspects of any given religion because, that's in my epistemology, magical parts of any given religion are the part of the religion that works. But there's that too. But yeah, I've studied some of Sehir, which is the Islamic version of sorcery. And I also am quite familiar with the Solomonic tradition within magic, which is heavily based on Muslim Sehir. I I finally found a way to get Rem Al Alim's Jinn sorcery book in a way that I can actually ask for it for Christmas, because for the longest time it was only available on Scarlet Imprint, and now it's finally available on Amazon too, which is nice. But yeah, while I'm not as familiar with Sehir as I would like to be, because there just aren't enough books translated in English from a Sehir perspective, I still do like Sehir in the same way that I like the traditional Martinist order in Christianity and Kabbalah in Judaism. But I am very much coming at it from an outsider perspective because I am literally usually just here for the magic bit. Moving on.
All right. Since I belong to many marginalized groups, I know where non-Christians are coming from when their religions or cultures are ignored or mocked. I also understand the resentment over feeling forced to conform to the demands of Christians to make them feel more comfortable. However, this push to acknowledge the existence and traditions of non-Christians doesn't mean that Christmas is banned.
No, but literally only the social justice types and the evangelical types even associate Christmas with Christianity. And again, I have known atheists who celebrate Christmas because Christmas is just awesome. I've known Jews who celebrate both Hanukkah and Christmas because Christmas is still awesome, etc., ad nauseum. And again, I've already talked about how, to me, it seemed somewhat silly to differentiate Yule from Christmas because Christmas is already 90% Yule. So, like, why not just, take the win that has been historically handed to you on a silver platter and go with it? But, whatever. Moving on.
All right. Last part. I still say Merry Christmas to those who I'm sure celebrate Christmas. However, if I don't know what holiday someone celebrates, I'm not arrogant enough to presume they celebrate Christmas. I'll say happy holidays, but then again, it isn't often that my existence is the dominant one in a space. So it's easier for me to remember to be inclusive. That's a lesson that more privileged people need to take to heart.
You wrote this entire article basically to tell Christians to go fuck themselves. And while specifically the evangelical, crazy traditionalist types who want to, keep Christ in Christmas TM are annoying, and I would side with you against them, at least on some level, your entire need to write this article tells me that you actually do allow Christians to just live in your head rent free enough to want to piss them off. So, yeah, no, the lady doth indeed protest too much, or the gentleman, because I don't know the gender of the person who wrote this fucking article, and I'm not interested enough to check. But point being, if you genuinely didn't care one way or the other, you probably wouldn't have made this article in the first place. Or you would have at least done the necessary research to make a meaningful contribution to this conversation, which again is 90% of my issue with this particular article, because at that point we're just arguing with two different sets of ignorant, moralistically charged morons, and I don't particularly like either of you. Like, no, Christmas isn't particularly Christian, but also no, it shouldn't be co-opted in the name of secularism and social justice either. That's my, I guess, in some sense, enlightened centrist stance on this. It's not Christian, but it's not anti-Christian either. Fuck off. Moving on.
Yeah. Okay, is it downloading? Yes, it is. All right. Again, for the record, if anyone, I'm not gonna lie, this don't usually sends the articles.
Yeah, because I'm good at finding the gems of pure stupid that need to be rebutted in these cases. It's not always a talent that I like having, but it is a talent that I do have.
But just for the record, this just given the title of this, you can blame Dolan for the cringe.
Like I said, we're mostly doing the social justice and or socialist co-opting of Christmas this week. Next week will probably be more religious fundamentalist oriented.
Okay, so this is originally from refinery29.com, written by Alice Porter and updated. I could say post, I'm not sure. December 12th, 2023. Christmas movies are obsessed with rewarding toxic men for bad behavior.
This is going to be one of those things that in most contexts are romantic or secretly toxic because our ideology says so articles in it.
All right. Drentrell says, he said like at 9:42, Amazon 2 fucking sequels, LOL. Feel like I missed the content of that.
Because I mentioned finally finding a way to get the book Jinn Sorcery by Rem Alim on Amazon, and therefore I can actually justify asking for it on my Christmas list this year. Because I try not to ask for too much that can't be found on either Amazon or Etsy, because God only knows how the shipping is going to work out with that. This year, I think there were 4 links to things that weren't Amazon, and I want to say 2 of them were Etsy links. So I've only asked this year for 2 things that aren't from either Amazon or Etsy this year. Or no, 3 things if we include the little kitten that I'm probably going to end up naming Zephyr.
You know what? I'm not even gonna. Of course, you'd name a cat.
Yeah, name it. Planning on naming him after the West Wind, or the spirit that's in charge of the West Wind, according to like Greco-Roman and most medieval lists.
Okay. Christmas rom-coms tend to fall on the so bad it's good side of cinema. Simple plot lines and gushy moments make them easy and enjoyable viewing, particularly during the holidays when you're feeling a little bit more sentimental. However, rewatching some of my old favorites like Love Actually and The Holiday and discovering new takes on the genre, mostly courtesy of Netflix's original holiday films, Christmas Prince, The Night Before Christmas, and Love Hard, I realize that my sentimentality has blinded me to the obvious issues with all these films. They're all about toxic men.
Pressing X to doubt, it's probably the case that men who are being heroic and or romantic and or chivalric are toxic according to your ideology. But as is usually the case when ideology fucks somebody's head up, my suggestion to you would be to turn off the ideological goggles and learn to enjoy things again. Because this is the thing. It's not just that the ideologues trying to moral fag over everything annoys me, which it does. It's also that it doesn't even make the person in question happy. It, in fact, more often than not, like hardcore moralistic ideologies tend to ruin things for people and prevent them from enjoying things. And I'm sorry, but if you're like, obviously some of this is down to simply because you think the ideology is true, and I suppose if you genuinely believe in the ideology, I can't fault you for that, but I have to wonder about people who adopt ideological lenses and then wind up holding everything they like to the standard of the ideology and finding out that they're not allowed to like anything anymore. That seems to me to be a hell of your own making, at least to some degree, and that makes me sad because so many people will literally, well, I guess I should say, like metaphorically or literally, depending on how deep their ideology gets to worm in their heads. People basically sell their souls to censorious, moralistic political ideologies or religious ideologies, and then they ruin things that they like for themselves. And it strikes me that living in a world that you think is the worst possible world for ideological reasons when you don't have to is something that we should strive to avoid or convert people from, because it doesn't even make you happy. So if it's neither true nor provides you any enjoyment, then what in the fuck are we actually doing here? Moving on.
Um, General says, don't complain about people moral fagging, quoting him, as he himself is a gay man with a moral code. LOL. You know what? General? I'm fine with the pun because it actually is funny. Most puns are funny, so.
Okay, but I mean, I'm not sure to what extent I would call it a moral code as much as it would be a code of like ethics or etiquette. Then again, I'm one of those pedantic motherfuckers who does draw a distinction between ethics and morality. So maybe I'm just shitting on the joke for no reason here. Maybe I don't know. And given that whatever quote unquote moral code I have allows me to bind myself in service to the Queen of Air and Darkness, I'm not sure what I would call like a moral code by that definition would qualify as a moral code to anyone else. Because usually people call me an evil bastard, and they're probably more right than not. Usually, because I am lawful neutral, teetering on the edge of lawful evil most of the time. That's why I try to surround myself with people who are a lot more morally upstanding than me, because sometimes I need to be kept on a leash. What? No side comment there, Brainstormer?
Sorry, I was distracted for a second there. I wasn't.
I was teeing it up for you, and you didn't. Never mind.
Sorry, I was like briefly reading the article. I got distracted.
Wah, 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 wah.
General, is it a code that defines what you should and should not do, which goes beyond what is purely practical? Oh yeah, it is a code that okay. It's a moral code, is what he's saying.
Again, I am a pedantic motherfucker, and I tend to refer to it more as an ethic than a moral. But then again, I'm no matter which way we slice this, I am fucking weird, because one does not usually find moral people in the service of the unseelie queen, but here we are. Moving on.
Whether they're gaslighting their love interest, asking for the most, well, while doing the bare minimum, or perpetuating misogynistic beliefs, the one thing the men in all my favorite Christmas films have in common is that they expect women to fix them.
usually the premise of these movies are someone who has like moral deficiencies have to prove themselves worthy of their love interest, and it's almost always the woman's job to be the moral measuring stick because women are sort of seen as morally perfect by default, which of course, as a men's rights advocate, I find intolerable for that reason. But this person literally went all the way to the other end of the spectrum and went, women shouldn't have to waste their time fixing the men they hang out with. Men should just try to be better for no good reason. Derp. Even though the very premise of these kind of movies usually is the woman is the woman is the person who convinces the man to be better because he needs to earn her affections. But somehow this is switched around and turned into a burden on the woman because she has to bother spending time redeeming the male love interest in her life or whatever the fuck. This is some feminist bizarro world shit here, ladies and gentlemen. Men have to prostrate themselves before women, women most affected, apparently.
Well,
Yes, Dragon Turtle. It's supposed to be a moral arc where the man, makes himself better to please the woman, but apparently women most affected by that somehow. And we're not even going to discuss whether any of this is misinterest or not, because misandry don't reel according to feminists, I guess. Moving on.
okay. Take, for example, one of Netflix's recent kitschy holiday rom-coms, Love Hard, from a couple Christmases ago. It follows Natalie, Nina Dobrev, who travels 3,000 miles across America just before Christmas to surprise the man she's been virtually dating for the past few weeks. Okay, past few weeks, it's a bit fast.
Yeah, I mean that might be a little bit overly clingy on her part because usually it has to be at least like a month or two before I'm even willing to entertain that sort of thing. But I don't know. You do you, girl. I guess. Again, we're not here to morally judge the women for the stupid things they do in these sorts of movies. It's only ever the men who have to be held to the moral standard of an arc. And somehow women are the most affected by this, and it's misogyny. Derp. The world bending over backwards to give women what they want. It's misogyny somehow. Fucking hell. Moving on.
All right. Twist. When she arrives, she realizes that Josh, Jimmy O Yang, her long distance lover, has catfished her. Love Hard has so many of the things you want from a Christmas film. Two very good looking stars, a unsuspecting love interest, great one liners. I mean, the protagonist even sing a version of Baby It's Cold Outside that unpacks its misogynistic undertones. Motherfucker.
And we're in this room now, as Boomer would say. Yet again, they're coming for Baby It's Cold Outside. And yet again, I must point out, absolutely no one had a problem with Baby It's Cold Outside when Kurt and Blaine from Glee were singing it together. Because suddenly, when it's two men singing it to each other, you don't find it manipulative or condescending. But when it's a man convincing a woman that evidently wants to stay with him but is refusing to based on 1950s social convention bullshit, that's somehow misogyny because he's not taking her lack of consent as read, even though she doesn't want him to, because fucking hell, it's called playing hard to get and testing your lover's loyalty and shit. And it's supposed to be really romantic that he doesn't want her to leave, but because that involves convincing her to stay, derp reasons. You'd think we would get through at least 1 week of Christmas articles before someone wants to come along and fucking scalp Baby It's Cold Outside again, but alas, no. Moving on.
All right. But when the film is over, was left with a strange, unsatisfied feeling. It ends, and let me insert a huge, predictable spoiler alert here, with Judge and Natalie falling in love as she dismisses his identity fraud as though it were a silly argument about what to have for dinner.
Okay, the I haven't seen this movie, but I'm gonna hazard a guess by virtue of like narrative prediction here. My guess is the arc of the movie is her realizing that she likes him better as the person he is than the person he lied and pretended to be. I'm gonna hazard a guess that that I consider it like 99% likely that the chance is that she's supposed to realize that the person he actually is in some way equal to or greater than the person he was pretending to be. And therefore, she's going to good naturedly rib him at the end because, as it turns out, if he pretended to be the person he actually was from the get go, they probably would have still hit it off. Am I near the mark, do we think? Because again, my guess is the premise is you should stop worrying about finding this perfect dreamboat of a guy and get with someone who actually exists. Which, given that this is like, Hallmark style Christmas movies, I'm guessing that the guy is already very attractive in his own right, regardless, because of how, leads in these kind of movies tend to work. So, in other words, she's not even necessarily settling for him because he's not someone that she necessarily even needs to settle for. She just realizes there was a miscommunication about who he was and is willing to overlook that miscommunication because he was a good guy anyway, is what I suspect happened. But let's see if we can demonstrate that by the author's feminist reframing of bullshit.
Okay. The struggle, snuggle, political compass, great. I always, God, those little like things. I always get them confused. I can't tell if
Uh,
that's greater
um,
than
I I think it's men are greater than women if we're going on the if we're
literal
going
word.
on the side, yeah, the side of which mouth is open, which is still how I remember how greater than less than works all these years
Okay.
later, having learned it that way first in first grade or something.
All right.
Uh,
Female greater than male should be grateful slash what is he gay? Male greater than male, funny slash hot. Female greater than female, you are a misogynist for saying it's possible even as a victim. Oh, and ignore all those rules if we like slash dislike someone there or some identities are more protected than others, even as just the flavor of the week before we turn on them.
yeah, the ideological blinders they be on, DT, and as usual, we will not be discussing how the man feels about any of this because Miss and Ree don't really, like why did this guy feel like he needed to hide who he was in the first place? Probably because he knew that people who he wanted wouldn't acquiesce to him on some level if he actually was honest about who he was. And why is he choosing to perpetrate this lie? Because he wants to at least get give people the chance to get to know him before completely disregarding him. Which, by the way, on 90% of all dating apps, it is almost always the woman who is making the choice whether she likes someone or not. Almost no men on straight dating apps will swipe left on somebody. Now, mind you, my personal experience of this is somewhat skewed because I'm a dude who likes dudes. But I will also tell you that it's always the more physically attractive man who gets to make the determination of whether they swipe right or left. The the lesser or unattractive person almost never gets to make that choice and wouldn't think to do so if you gave them that option. Because most people who are in some way imperfect are used to the idea of I need to convince other people to choose me rather than be elitistly pissed off that people aren't choosing me. Moving on.
All right. All right. I don't exactly expect nuance from Netflix's Christmas films, but this simplistic portrayal of catfishing is problematic, to say the least. As victims of catfishing often suffer both financial and emotional damage, simplifying this issue just didn't sit right with me. Neither the fact that the male protagonist was ultimately rewarded for his deception, for which he was almost entirely unapologetic.
Okay, two things. One, as with most of these romantic Hallmark card style movies, it's supposed to be a fantasy in some sense. It's supposed to be an ideal. And the kind of storyline that you're proposing where scary stuff happens to the person who got catfished belongs more so on the Lifetime network than it does on the Hallmark network, if we're, using that differentiation system. And I know because my mom is fucking addicted to both Hallmark movies and Lifetime movies at different points. But yeah, the reason it doesn't go into this level of nuance that would make it a much darker and quote unquote more grounded movie is because it's a Hallmark style movie and not a Lifetime style movie. If it were a Lifetime style movie, that's exactly what would have happened. But again, my guess is the argument is she needs to learn to love someone for who he is, and you're going to interpret that moral arc on her part as misogynistic, even though if the opposite were true, if she had catfished him, you would probably not see it as nearly as problematic. And again, part of the reason why he doesn't apologize for the catfishing is because one way or the other, and again, I haven't seen this movie, so I'm going based on the template of how these stories usually go. I'm guessing she learned to like him for who he was, and therefore he didn't need to apologize at the end. Am I near the mark? But of course, we never need to worry about being too sympathetic to the male character who felt like he had to lie to get people who he wanted interested in him. And we never get to explore the self-esteem issues thereof, but her having to deal with the fact that she was still going out with a hot guy, because again, this is how movies like this usually go, being as they're, utopian fantasies most of the time. I'm guessing the person didn't look like Jack Black or didn't look like Jesse Eisenberg. I'm guessing the guy was still tall, handsome, jacked as fuck, wealthy,
No,
etc. It's
no.
just he didn't.
Jimmy O Yang is. Have you ever watched Silicon Valley?
I have heard of it. I've never seen it.
He's on that, but he is not what you think.
Okay, but okay, I stand corrected then. Fair enough. Again, I'm going into this blind because I haven't seen this movie. Just going on how these narratives usually go. But I'm gonna guess that he's only like nerdy or unattractive in movie star terms, i.e., if he existed literally anywhere but Hollywood, he would be a 8 or a 9 probably.
No.
Really?
Short
Okay, well
Asian
then,
dude.
right, but is he attractive by normal people standards and just unattractive by
I'll look
Hollywood
up a
standards?
photo. I'll look up a photo for you, man.
Okay. Because if Netflix was smart enough to actually play this somewhat straight, then I will withdraw at least some of my criticisms here. Although the StreamYard has been giving me the buffering wheel of death for the last couple minutes, so I'm gonna have to disconnect and reconnect if I'm going to judge what this guy looks like. And yes, I am a catty bitch. This is not new.
We just.
Okay, I am back, which
Alright.
means I shall now commence with the being a catty little gay bitch and judging the shit out of someone's appearance. Okay, so fair enough. They at least tried to get someone who looked like realistically unattractive, but still, saying that this guy is lower than a 6 or a 7 by most normal people's standards would be a bit of a stretch. Doesn't even rate at all on my personal attractiveness scale, but that's because I have very particular taste when it comes to people, but that's neither here nor there. Point being, if a normal ass, like middle or working class person saw this dude in reality and not in the context of Hollywood, I doubt he would do particularly bad with the women or even some of the men. I wouldn't get into bed with him if he were the last person on earth, but again, I have very particular tastes.
Alright. Yeah. Okay, percent. Can we move on?
Yes, and yes, you're right, Dragon Turtle. That's why I was surprised as well, because usually this goes that there's some character defect that the guy has, but he's still, movie star looking motherfucker because Hollywood. But yeah, I am somewhat surprised and in fact even impressed that Netflix actually managed to be somewhat anti stereotype for once. Still doesn't change the dynamic of there are reasons and rationales as to why this woman should let him off the hook for and stuff. And no, it's not misogynistic to expect her to. Granted, I'd be very surprised if there was never a conversation in the movie about um him like getting his ear chewed for catfishing her. But I suspect again that this is the Hallmark movie style of logic where even though this is probably the best case scenario of catfishing in reality, in this one it's treated like the worst case scenario, even though it could be much, much worse, a la Lifetime sort of thing. Moving on.
Alright, this is just a start. Over the years, we've overlooked awful behavior from characters in many of our beloved Christmas movies. Toxic men abound even in The Holiday.
Okay, and by this same standard, this standard of yours, are there any women who would be considered toxic or manipulative or gaslighting or whatever? Because the issue we're having here appears to be that these sorts of Hallmark movies hardly ever portray things that, if the two people involved weren't attractive, that would be acceptable. But the simple fact of the matter is, pretty people get away with shit that not pretty people would not get away with, especially in the wallpapered world of Hallmark movies, where it's literally selling you on an overly idyllic fantasy. I might be wrong because again, I don't normally subject myself to this kind of Hallmark shit. But my guess is that this guy in in the movie we were just talking about probably has a bunch of redeeming qualities that eventually convinces her to give him a chance. And if that's wrong, if there actually is a pro catfishing Christmas movie, I will be very surprised. I suspect, though, this woman is strawmanning the shit out of that movie. Anyway, on to the holiday, I guess.
Jack Black's character Miles in 2006's The Holiday is problematic. Full stop. He consistently leads Iris, Kate Winslet, on and drops her for his toxic ex-girlfriend before they eventually end up together. But Jude Law's character Graham is the perfect man, right? Wrong. Rewatching the film now, I realize that not only does painfully attractive Graham meet Amanda Cameron Diaz by stumbling into her holiday home so drunk that he can't stand up, and she tells her the next day that she'll probably never see him again.
Because who ever heard of people meeting in unorthodox ways or in ways that would be embarrassing down the line or something? Again, I hate to burst this particular bubble, but people do sometimes meet in rather unusual circumstances or unorthodox circumstances or uncomfortable circumstances. Usually, if the relationship goes well, they will reframe and recontextualize it in their own heads, and that will become a cute anecdote. And I suspect that that's the kind of shenanigans that The Holiday gets up to. Again, I haven't seen The Holiday because I don't usually tend to go in for all that Hallmarky type shit. At least not when it's not two dudes, and they almost never make gay Hallmark movies because straight couples are simply more marketable. But that's neither here nor there. Yeah, I'm not a fan of these sorts of movies generally. These sorts of really cliche romance movies. But that being said, I would highly be surprised if the shenanigans that the couple got up to meet each other weren't the kind of shenanigans that will become a hilarious anecdote when they later have kids and are telling their kids how they met or whatever the fuck. Because again, these almost utopian romance movies don't have a tendency of being shocking or edgy or in any way engaging on that level. It's one of the reasons I have very minimal patience for this kind of romance movie. Granted, I do have a love for male type stuff, but again, that almost never makes it onto TV because straight people are just more marketable. God damn it. Moving along.
And here we have another sad by our resident gay boy.
Shush. You can mock me when you're still a virgin at almost 30, sir. That's fuck you.
I'm a virgin at 25.
Yeah, and you still have 5 years of your 20s in which to get laid. So you can bitch at me if you're still if you're still a virgin when you're almost in your 30s there.
Alright. I tend to hurt people simply by being myself, he says, adding that he also has the classic male problem of no follow through, and he never calls the women he has dated afterwards. Could it be that Jude Law in The Holiday is the ultimate fuck boy? The film does a pretty good job trying to convince us otherwise, redeeming Miles along the way, too. In fact, the plot of The Holiday could be described as two troubled women trying to save two toxic men.
Okay, and again, we find ourselves in a situation where the woman is considered perfect by default, and therefore she is the moral measuring stick upon which the guy's moral arcs are meant to be laid. And I'm not saying there are no movies ever where women are the morally flawed ones that need to be held to someone else's standard. But I can't think of any movies of the romance genre where that is the case. It's almost always the woman who is considered perfect by default, and the man who must mold himself to her standard in order to become worthy of her. And if The Holiday is the one movie in a million where that is not the case, I will eat my fucking hat. Because these things simply do not happen in romance movies. Romance movies are almost always told from a female perspective because the majority of the audience for romance movies are women. In fact, the majority of people who consume romance content at all are usually women, and that includes male for male gay romance stories. By the way, there's actually a larger percentage of straight women who read gay male romance novels than even gay men do. I assume because she likes to imagine those guys being intimate with each other as a quasi friendship, and or maybe women have a thing similar to the whole lesbian porn angle for straight dudes where she imagines herself in a threesome with them or something. I don't know. But yeah, that is one of those unusual factoids that straight women actually take up more of a percentage of the market of gay romance novels than gay men do. Moving on.
Okay, quote here. Clearly, there's something about a woman fixing a man that feels particularly festive. In the past, the film's problematic elements haven't been so obvious to me, disguised by snowy Cotswold landscapes and Cameron Diaz's inexplicably shiny hair. But if you look past the illusions of Christmas, you might find that The Holiday is no less problematic than Love Hard when it comes to excusing men's toxicity or going even further, rewarding men for their shitty behavior.
Okay, no. This is where the feminist bullshit is coming in. That is not what happens in most romance movies, especially not Christmas romance movies. What happens is a woman falls for a guy who is attractive but an asshole, and he slowly but surely becomes less of an asshole so as to meet with her approval. And the reason why so many movies, romance and otherwise, feature that template is because women like to imagine themselves being pure and good enough to incentivize someone to fix themselves. It's the same thing that happens with the bodice ripper trope in romance stories. If you as a woman can tame a untamed man, that says something positive about your qualities as a person and or as a moral agent. That is usually the framework behind the quote unquote toxic man becomes less toxic trope. It's because the purity and the goodness and the influence of the woman incentivizes that man to change and become a better person. The funny thing is how seldom it actually works in the opposite direction, where a good man is a reason for a ne'er do well woman to reform or better herself. And we could have a reasonable conversation about that, but it would require you abandoning your feminist credentials, and you don't seem to want to do that because you can turn a movie where a man has to make himself better for the sake of the approval of a woman and somehow think that the woman is being victimized by that by having to put in the effort to change him in any way. Even though a lot of women like stories where their goodness ends up changing a bad man into a good man, or at least a man willing to defend her, because women like to imagine themselves as moral paragons. And as it so happens, so do a lot of straight men like to imagine women as moral paragons. Moving on. Yeah, I'm right there with you, DT. I would rather read a romance novel than watch porn in most cases.
God damn it! I married myself because I was like drinking and stuff.
Mhm.
I read that comment.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, shall we?
Hmm.
Experiencing a
Yep.
reckoning.
Sorry, go ahead.
Experiencing experiencing a reckoning over the years. It's already been established that my favorite Christmas rom-com, Love Actually, is just as disappointing. There's Mark, Andrew Lincoln, who professes his love to his newly married best friend's wife via huge pieces of cardboard. He is undeniably a dick, and no one could forget the moment when Harry, Alan Rickman, breaks his wife's Emma Thompson Emma Thompson's heart by having an affair with his much younger secretary.
Okay, I can't much speak to the Emma Thompson Alan Rickman subplot because I don't particularly remember that part of Love Actually. But here's the thing: as far as we as the viewer are aware, the guy who is marrying the best friend who is marrying the female character is aware that Mark has a crush and has had a crush on the female character for a long time. So are we ever going to talk about the kind of dickish move it must have been to go out with and date a woman that your best friend has a thing for and then actually invite him to the fucking wedding? Like I'm not saying unrequited love is an excuse for all things and stuff, but if 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 I were dating someone and my best friend in all the world had a crush on that person, I would need to make very sure that my best friend was okay with me marrying the person he had a crush on before proceeding with the relationship much further than that. Because most actual friends are loyal enough to their friends that you don't have to explain to them that that's a thing that would probably need to be done. Is it kind of um dickish of Mark to interrupt the wedding and shit because my unrequited feelings and shit? In a way, I guess, sure, but he never insinuates that she then has to act on those feelings or that his friend has to act on his, feelings or anything. He just as as it is played in Love Actually, he just wants to get the feelings off his chest because it will always and forever run his mind in circles if he doesn't, which is way more sympathetic than you're letting on. It's not. And by the way, Mark doesn't get rewarded for this at the end of Love Actually. It's not like the woman he has a crush on breaks it off with the guy who is the best friend of the guy who just got married and chooses him instead or whatever. Um, it's mostly left ambiguous as to what Keira Knightley's character thinks about this whole thing. She smiles in a compassionate way at him, and then I think the movie just completely moves on from that entire plot. Um, which is to say that I think she was trying to be nice, or what we as the viewers are being shown is that she's trying to be sympathetic and nice to him, um, and not ripping him a new asshole for embarrassing her or something, which is a mature reaction to this. And if we're being entirely honest, another sort of secondary implication is that she also knew that Mark had a thing for her. So I don't I don't necessarily even think that Keira Knightley's character was particularly put out by this because she was trying to be as compassionate to him as she could, which again means that she is a good character, like from a moral sense. If she doesn't make everything about her and rip him a new asshole for being awkward and shit. I think the feminist interpretation of this is one in which she rips him a new asshole and breaks his heart entirely for even bothering to tell her his feelings, and then he dies in a hole or some shit. But yeah, in the actual movie, she's at least like compassionate slash sympathetic to him, but it's not like he gets rewarded for it in the end by having her leave the dude she just married or anything. So I'm not sure how you interpret this as rewarding toxic behavior. And again, I don't remember the Alan Rickman subplot. I assume that that was quite heartbreaking, but I also don't remember the Alan Rickman subplot, so sue me. Moving on. I'm assuming that Brainstormer stepped away for a second, or
Yeah, I'm
that he
back.
forgot to
Sorry.
unmute again.
I forgot to unmute again.
Yep.
Giant Turtle, dick move, dude. Shit or get off the pot. Was he supposed to just leave her there? Maybe even chase off other guys? Casey actually asked her out sometime, or say no, you are not invited to the wedding.
Like honestly, to me, inviting him to the wedding is kind of a form of torture, because if you knew that your best friend in the world had a crush on the girl you're going to marry, maybe like I'm not saying that you shouldn't invite him to the wedding, but one, you probably should have asked like permission at some point long before this whole thing happened, because by the time it's escalated to a wedding, you've probably been dating for like a year or so. And at least from what I remember of Love Actually, which I haven't watched in a long time, but from what I remember of Love Actually, the guy who marries the girl that the other guy has a crush on was fully and deeply aware of the other guy's crush long before they started going out or indeed getting married. So, in a way, it would have been more merciful to not fucking invite him to the wedding, because sitting there and watching your best friend get married to the woman that you've had a crush on for years, I'm just gonna go out on a limb here and say, yes, that's probably going to break his fucking heart pretty damn good. And the fact that he's willing to be your friend after that frankly quite insensitive bullshit does at least speak to some of the moral quality of Mark, even if he is socially awkward enough that he can't fully express his feelings for Keira Knightley's character.
Giant Turtle doesn't know her. The friend shouldn't need to ask permission. He had his shot, probably many, and never took it. I mean, to be fair, I kind of agree with that.
Maybe again, this might be me seeing things from a bit of a male perspective and going bros before hoes a little bit, but if you knew somebody had a crush on somebody and you were going to try and pursue this woman, I should think that your best friend not, ripping himself up internally would matter enough to you that you would at least talk to him about it beforehand. And again, it seems like a bit of a dick move to invite him to the wedding and force him to watch the woman that he has a crush on marry somebody else. But again, maybe this is just me having empathy for the quote unquote incel in this particular story or something.
To be fair, I've never seen Love Actually.
And I haven't watched it in years. I might be misremembering half of this shit, but I remember it well enough to know that most of this feminist revisionism is in fact feminist revisionism.
Honestly, guys, I would love to have this whole conversation play out because it's interesting, but we have like another one that I think is pretty long.
Yeah, so we should move. And to your point, DT, yeah, I guess it is somewhat of a dick move of Mark to say, if guy whose name I can't remember did ask him, is it okay if I shoot my shot with her? If he had said, fuck no, you're not allowed to, I can understand that being an argument between friends, But if they're close enough friends to consider each other best friends, that kind of conversation shouldn't be the kind of conversation that ends the friendship. Maybe I got lucky in the sense that while I have nowhere near as many friends as I would like to, the friends I do have are open and honest enough with me that we can talk about serious shit in such circumstances. But to me, it either seems like maybe the guy who ends up marrying Keira Knightley's character didn't actually regard Mark as that close of a friend to begin with, which I suppose is fair enough if he didn't. But as far as I can remember, they were like thick as thieves bros prior to Keira Knightley's character coming between them. So like in my head, the adult move is to have a conversation. If you know that your best friend is carrying a torch for a girl, and then you wind up dating said girl, I would think it would be an adult conversation to have of like, dude, are you okay with this? And to not notice that his friend is, internally torturing himself over this while you date the girl he has a crush on is also kind of dickish to me, but whatever.
I also agree with Jantrell. Framing it as I guess I have empathy sounds very passive aggressive.
My point is that maybe being a men's rights advocate, I've seen things from a male victimhood standpoint in a lot of cases where most people I guess wouldn't. And that's why maybe I'm having some empathy for the quote unquote incel that other people aren't. But I'm not trying to morally grandstand. I'm just as a general rule, someone who is a men's rights advocate is used to finding, the male vulnerabilities where other people wouldn't normally see them. So maybe I'm biased in that sense.
Very so. Very evident. I'm not dissing you for it. I'm just saying that as an acknowledgement.
And it's also possible that this just might be one of those Hollywood movies not behaving like fucking real people thing. Where
no, that's most definitely it. Because let's be honest, let's all be fully honest with rom-coms here. No matter what, they are a gross, oversimplified exaggeration for drama's sake.
So men's rights bullshit aside, this is yet another case of characters in movies not behaving like rational human beings and having freaking conversations about shit that would be very easy to have a conversation about. Regardless. But yeah. In my head, the better version of this is one in which the dude makes sure he's not torturing his best friend before pursuing the girl he knows his bro has a crush on. But that is again just me. But again, it's kind of equivalent of the bros before hoes thing. Anyway, moving on.
Alright. Even some of the more lovable men in the cherished Richard Curtis film are only redeemed by their love interest. Colin, Chris Marshall, does even less than the bare minimum to end up with 3 gorgeous American women, while Hugh Grant's portrayal of the Prime Minister only has emotional complexity because of his very funny and charming tea-girl, Natalie Martine McCutcheon, I think is how you say it. Who he fired after... Huh?
I said I have no idea.
Okay. Who he fires after she is sexually harassed by the U.S. president. Awful. What the fuck?
I think you're being very liberal with the phrase sexual assault. I think the president tries to come on to her and
what the fuck is this movie about?
It's you remember the Taylor Lautner Taylor Swift movie Valentine's Day?
No.
Okay, shit. It's like an anthology of 5 or 6 different subplots, each subplot taking up like a short film's worth of runtime in the thing, and then they like interact with one another, or like the storylines overlap and shit. Again, the only story that I remember firmly enough to actually have an opinion on is the Keira Knightley dude and his best friend love triangle thing. I haven't seen Love Actually in years, and I'm honestly probably gonna have to look up where I can stream this after the episode just to make sure I'm not pulling things out of my ass here.
Okay. Um,
Brainstorm?
hello?
Where'd you go? Okay.
I asked, moving on, or
Yeah.
okay. You'd
Sorry.
hope
It cut you off, I think.
You'd hope that things might have improved in 20 years since Love Actually was released, but Netflix seems to have cemented the forgiving of toxic men as its Christmas rom-com formula, and not just with Love Hard. In A Christmas Prince, one of Netflix's most loved Christmas films, Amber, Rose McIver, falls in love with Prince Richard despite his reputation as a notorious playboy who is rude to her when they first meet. Amber spends most of the film trying to redeem Prince Richard's character to the public and to herself, while trying to prove he's next in line for the throne. Similarly, The Night Before Christmas sees Brooke, Vanessa Hudgens, teach a time-traveling medieval knight to adapt to the modern world, apologizing and correcting his behavior throughout the film. Okay, that one makes sense, because the motherfucker's from a different time entirely.
Yeah, literal medieval chivalry for the win, I suppose, and so on. But like, again, this is very much a play on the Beauty and the Beast motif. Like the woman is the like morally sacrosanct character who, through her, radiant goodness, convinces the guy who is, beastly in some manner to reform his character, and on we move. And here's the thing that's really gonna cook your noodle here, my dear. The reason why this subplot happens in so many romance movies is because women like to imagine themselves as the morally sacrosanct one capable of fixing the bad boy or the beast. Like the reason this subplot exists in romance movies is not because society in general is misogynistic to women herder. It's because women like seeing themselves as the saintly put upon virtuous one who by virtue of the grandeur of her goodness can redeem the beast, the bad boy, the ne'er-do-well, etc. Because again, calling back to like body strippers and stuff, women like bad boys who use their bad boyness to be like assertive or protective towards their women. That's that's like 90% of the arc for all like romances is man who is in some way, morally unvirtuous or beastly or something, find the woman who convinces him to be better. And again, not to play this card too many times and shit, but can you think of any case where it has happened the other way around? Because I can't think of fucking any. Has there ever been a genteel man who had to like tame a bitchy, beastly woman? I guess if we're being very generous with the term fix, the Taming of the Shrew is literally that, I suppose. But Taming of the Shrew is one of Shakespeare's least loved plays for that exact reason. Anyway, moving on.
Alright, the Christmas rom-com formula. Clearly, there's something about a woman fixing a man that feels particularly festive. Perhaps it appeals to us because, for a lot of adults, Christmas is when we go home to visit our families and are looked after for a short period. It can be that one forgiving and helping her love interest demonstrates a certain maternal instinct that many people crave during the holidays. It also makes for a simple plot line, which is vital to a Christmas rom-com in order to make for easy viewing. The rom-com formula is essentially this: boy and girl meet, something goes wrong, that thing is resolved, that they live happily ever after.
Yes, although how the fuck you got maternal out of that is frankly somewhat creepy to me. Because you could have made that entire argument without ever mentioning maternalness, which I don't wanna play the P word card, but if you can see woman fixing bestial man as her acting maternally, then that is one hell of a Freudian ice slip you just did there. But yeah, the reason why so the main reason why so many stories revolve around a pure, innocent woman fixing a bestial man is because women like to see themselves as the moral superiors of men, and they like the idea that their moral superiority can tame or fix or moderate or control a beast. Like again, it's literally as old as at least the Disney version of La Belle and La Bête, because actually in the original context of the fairy tale, the prince was not an asshole while he was a beast. The arc actually was Belle's to learn how to love a kind but ugly person. But as far as the 90s are fucking concerned, the Beauty and the Beast trope, and this is the one that generally caught on with people, is pure, virtuous woman fixes bestial, uncouth man. Repeat ad infinitum.
Moving on.
Yep, moving on.
Alright. I want to fix a toxic man in an easy way to fulfill this, and maybe we're willing to accept this kind of unsophisticated plot just because it's the holidays. Plus, with Christmas taking place right in the middle of cuffing season, perhaps we're keener than ever to find a partner and might be feeling a little more forgiving of potential romantic interests faults. The Woman Fixes Toxic Man storyline allows viewers a certain hope that men, even the very worst of them, aren't as bad as they seem and are capable of love, which might reflect many women's fantasies rather than experiences. This feels apt as many people go back to their exes during the holidays or revisit unhealthy relationships.
Okay, my dear, you are projecting your modern day feminist bullshit onto something that's as old as the freaking hills. Most women, okay, are not feminist women. And don't project like feminist theories of my patriarchy and my male toxicity onto literally every man on earth. Regardless of the ideology or not, though, women like believing that they are morally sacrosanct and have the power, therefore, by their goodness or by their quality, to fix men who are powerful, but also not good, which can then be transmuted into a man who still is as powerful as a beast, but is using that power usually for the woman's benefit. That usually is the difference between the beast at the beginning of the Beauty and the Beast arc and the beast at the end of the Beauty and the Beast arc. They still have all the power and the money and the influence and the status symbols of that bestial nature, but they are using that bestial nature to be protective of the woman and or reforming the worst qualities of that bestial nature for the sake of the woman. I mean, whether it's the Beast and Belle in 90s Beauty and the Beast, or whether it's Edward Cullen and Bella Swan, or whether it's Anastasia Steele and Christian Grey, like this trope is as old as the hills because people like women often like the powerful bestial domineering nature of a bestial male, but they also like believing that their like moral virtue or their qualitative virtue can subordinate that man into becoming a better person and or taming themselves enough that that woman can benefit from that man's power. not to be overly pedantic about it. But yeah, the main reason why this trope keeps happening is because women like believing themselves the moral superiors of men, and they like the idea of taming someone powerful enough to be a beast into not being a beast anymore. Moving on.
All right. Hey, hold on. I know from Black Lagoon. I don't think you've seen that. I saw that when I was young.
Black
Uh,
Lagoon?
it's an anime.
Yeah, no, I haven't seen it.
I don't think. To be fair, it's like, what would be a qualitative comparison? It's basically like a crime drama.
Okay.
Um, yeah, Insane Angel. Oh, that's huh. Oh, yeah, he says from some videos that apparently the main female character was sort of jealous of the main character being in that criminal world without being fully consumed as a person by it. If I remember correctly, inside the like later material, he does start to become corrupted. Yeah, he does start to be kind of corrupted by it. It's a whole thing. Like it's a good show. Like honestly, and it's one of those shows that actually has like a really good dub.
Interesting. I will have to add it to the docket of things to watch at some point.
Yeah. Um, it's incredibly violent though.
Well, I mean, most action anime does have those moments. Like, how violent are we talking exactly? Like like redo of healer levels of fuck you violence?
I I don't want that. Okay.
Oh,
Whatever.
you've never heard of redo of healer?
I don't really watch anime, to be fair. So
Ah, it's a story about a guy whose main power is to be a healer, but basically he gets beaten up and tortured for most of his life.
I
So,
don't.
so
Yeah, violent and sadism are different. Says Angel. Okay. Okay, the perspective. Not only is it's very real, I guess the way I could say.
okay, so it's not like super over the top in its violence or anything.
Not really. It's not Tarantino, if I'm to make that comparison, but
Okay,
it's in a middle spectrum of that. Like, okay, let's
uh,
say that like Tarantino violence is like the extreme, and I guess the like something from like Law and Order on the other end.
okay, so somewhere
It's
in the middle there.
I would say it kind of leans a bit there. Okay, so in perspective, there is because it talks about a lot of stuff, right? But
Hmm.
in perspective, there is a scene where these two twins, like children, who are also assassins,
Okay,
are keep in mind these are kids, right? They they kill a guy by putting nails in his head, and he's just sitting there tied up in a chair, and
okay, that's certainly a thing, I suppose.
it's a like I could go more in detail, but I'd rather not.
Okay, but so they end up killing a guy with a nail gun or something, or
No,
do
they
they
hammer
actually
the
like
no,
hammer the nail
they
in?
hammer the nails into his head.
Okay, I'm not sure if that's more graphic or less graphic, because in my head I was thinking one of those automatic nail gun things, but okay.
No, no, they again, there's a and those kids actually do die. Like they get shot, which they don't hold back on it. Again, it's like it's when I say it's real, it doesn't shy away to show how fucked shit can be when you're in kind of that
So
criminal
more,
lifestyle.
so more or less graphic than Death Note.
I mean, Death Note wasn't that graphic, to be fair.
No, but that's why I'm trying to gauge, because that does have quote unquote realistic violence, but it doesn't like go overboard with it. That's why I'm asking.
I will say it is a bit. It's okay compared to that in terms of violence. It is a bit overboard.
Okay, let's see what's another example of violence.
But to answer your question, it's okay. It's less than Hellsing, but more than Death Note. So it's in that middle. Then more so.
Right, DT, but sadism is usually the form of violence that gets turned up to 11 in most things. That's why I asked about Redo of Healer, because Redo of Healer is really fucking jarring at times with its level of gore and violence.
Okay, I'm not gonna ask. Um, yeah, but I'm not. It again. It's like it's a crime show at the end of the day. Um, not Breaking Bad, but what would be a comparison?
Sopranos, maybe?
No, no.
Dexter?
No.
Okay, so not more or less. Which direction am I going here? Am I getting warmer or colder?
Kind of older.
Okay, so not as violent as Breaking Bad, but more violent than Dexter. Sons of Anarchy?
Kinda. If I remember that show correctly.
Okay. Okay, so that actually does clarify things then. Because if it's more violent than Dexter, but less violent than Breaking Bad, and somewhere in the general vicinity of
Well,
Sons
no,
of
I'm talking
Anarchy,
about
I
like
think
the.
I know.
I'm talking about like the tone, like the style of the story. Now and the
Okay.
violence.
Okay.
Okay, Redo of Healer is revenge fantasy, power fantasy, justified revenge, though maybe taken too far. Okay.
Yeah, I would remove the maybe on that front, DT. You never piss off the quiet ones, and that Redo of Healer is a very, very precise definition of why you never piss off the quiet ones. Base premise, Brainstormer, is that this healer gets to like level 20 in his particular system of skills, and he finds out that he can heal time. And mind you, this healer was a healer who was basically everyone's butt monkey and then some for the entirety of his life. So he goes back and quote unquote heals time and puts himself back at the start of his own arc and decides to basically be a bloodthirsty cunt to everyone. Because fuck you, that's why.
Okay, I'm not gonna ask because I feel like there's a lot more darker context there, and I don't want to know.
Yeah, I was just giving you like the base premise of the thing.
Okay.
Basically, I'm gonna screw them all over before they can screw me over a second time kind of logic.
I get you. I get you. Okay. Um. Anyway, shall we finish this article? And I'm not gonna lie. I think just for time purposes, we're going to save the third article for next week.
That's probably true, especially because I do think it is a longer one than this.
I think so too.
Okay, so yeah, we'll move the secondary article about Soviet attempts to rebrand Christmas to next week because
Yeah.
that's a thing now.
There are some Christmas films that forgo this awful tradition. Netflix's Christmas hit Last Christmas, written by Emma Thompson and starring Emily Clark, actually reverses it without giving too much away. The male protagonist saves the life of Clark's character in a moving twist halfway through the film. Netflix's The Princess Switch 2 is one of the streaming site's few films that sees no women cast as romantic uppers. The film embraces a Parent Trap style plot as Vanessa Hudgens discovers a stranger who looks identical to her and they switch identities. The women in this film have motives other than romantic relationships, so the men they are dating take on supporting roles and appear pretty decent throughout, perhaps because of their lack of screen time. Well, wouldn't that make...
Okay,
Hold on, sorry.
sorry. Go ahead.
I feel like you're going to go with this, but I kind of want to start.
Yeah, no, go first. It's fine. Go ahead.
So effectively, they are dating the other's like romantic interest, right? So
That is correct.
wouldn't that make it terrible because they are effectively cheating on their significant others with that other woman's significant other?
Yeah, but that would require us to have sympathy for the male character, and that is
okay.
foreboding.
Okay, not to be a dick, but I'm not seeing the. I don't. I'm not trying to get on the soapbox here with that. I'm just more pointing out
Double standard.
that, and also well, yeah, like seriously, if double standards, and also this like seriously, is that not like extremely fucked up?
But I will bet you money that it's framed as whimsical and silly the whole time and never actually deals with the actual implications thereof.
I feel like
might,
a movie. Wait, sorry. I think there was a movie that also did this, but it was with guys instead of women.
That may well be a thing I don't know, but
I think that was also played for comedic effect as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think either way you slice it, obviously it's fucked.
Right, but point being, the writer of this article is fine so long as it doesn't put any burden on women, and she doesn't even appear to notice the moral awkwardness of essentially switching partners and having sex with them under false pretenses. It also occurs to me that this person just might hate romance as a genre itself, because like 90% of that person's accepting of this particular movie was that it wasn't romance focused. So this person might just be projecting feminist gobbledygook to basically explain why she hates romance movies, which, if that's how she feels, that's fair, but like you don't need the critical theory woo-woo to explain why you don't like romance movies. You can just not like romance movies if you want to. Like, and this is the thing. The thing that always baffles me with these sorts of ideologues is they can't think of any justification outside of "but my ideology, therefore." And that's the part that always makes me want to bash my head into a wall sometimes, because it's like, if you are a grown-ass adult and you are that addicted to an ideology that you literally cannot see a world beyond it, that is in and of itself the problem, regardless of whatever ideology you happen to be working with. If you become so fucking boxed in by an ideology that you can't even conceive of rationales beyond it, then fuck you and your ideology, in my opinion. Anyway. Moving on, though.
Yep. These films show there are ways to create holiday rom-coms without encouraging damaging behaviors. Nevertheless, many of us will continue to watch them uncritically, choosing the genre for the very purpose of switching off. But as streaming sites ramp up their modern takes on the festive romantic comedy and endeavor to explore contemporary issues like catfishing, it's crucial that they do so responsibly, avoiding oversimplification. The rewarding
Okay.
Hold on. Last
Go
sentence. The Rewarding and Toxic Men is certainly something I'll look out for during my seasonal viewing from now on. I'll treat it like a festive Bechdel test. Oh my god, the fact that you think that's funny is
See, again, the fact that your metaphorical dick is trapped in your ideology is the fucking problem. This idea that you have to produce ethical storytelling at all times, or you're encouraging bad behavior and shit. Even though the base premise of these kind of stories is a semi-utopian, like, fantasy of a best case scenario. Like, we all dream of, we all dream of either meeting the princess or meeting Prince Charming, depending on which way you happen to swing. But unfortunately, such people are in short supply and probably wouldn't be interested in us anyway. But as this person readily admits, sometimes you have to put the morality away and not let the morality ruin your fucking life. You can indulge in scenarios that you wouldn't be ethically okay with if they really happened in real life without becoming an immoral bastard. Like, like the classic example is the video game example. Just because somebody plays GTA or Call of Duty doesn't mean they're about to go on a shooting spree. And no one who is inclined to go on a shooting spree has ever been, made any worse by playing violent video games. As far as we know, these kind of displacement fantasies actually help people have catharsis for negative emotions rather than, being forced to indulge in them in real life. If anything, it's actually the other way around. The more violent video games someone plays, the more likely they are to channel any violent impulses they have into that harmless activity and therefore not engage in them in real life. And maybe in some sense, if women are allowed to indulge in romantic comedy type fantasies, they will be less hypercritical of men. Now, I don't know if that actually does follow, because I don't know if women use these sorts of fantasies as catharsis in the way that men do with video games, or in the way that most people do with video games. But just like that, though, you can differentiate between your ideal fantasy and real life. And also, is it really, are the things that happen in said romantic comedies really so toxic or so immoral that we even need to make that sort of differentiation? Because I've watched a lot of rom-coms in my time, because my mom and I used to bond over chick flick movies, which probably should have been a clue for at least one of us as to what was about to happen with regards to my sexuality, but never mind. But yeah, speaking as someone who has watched a lot of chick flick movies, and a lot of romantic comedies and so on, most of the misunderstandings that happen in romantic comedies rise to the level of misunderstandings and or shenanigans, not immoral actions. And the reason why you're framing a lot of this stuff as straight up immoral rather than just plot relevant shenanigans like every other fucking functional human being is because your feminist credentials tell you that you have to hold everything to a feminist ideological standard in order to enjoy it. And just as a general rule, if you have an ideology that is so totalitarian and all-encompassing that you literally have to convince yourself not to like things you previously liked, then maybe the ideology is the fucking problem, rather than the thing you would like regardless of the ideology being the problem. Moving on.
right. Okay, so now we're just going to do trailers. Both are by me. I mean, both I picked out.
Yeah, recommended by Brainstormer.
Yeah.
Because I'm good at finding articles, unless most of the time, if I find a trailer that I think we should cover, he's already sent it, or like literally the second I try to send it, he'll send it. That's happened to us like 5 or 6 times in a row with trailers. Anyway, moving right along.
Mm-hmm. So this is Dear Santa. starring Jack Black. It's a trailer for something that's, I believe, already come out. The trailer itself came out a month ago. Yeah, it's on Paramount Plus.
Yeah, the good news is there's no possible way it could be as bad as Seth Rogen's attempt to do a Christmas movie. So,
or a Christmas series.
Yeah. Although I will say I don't want to give away the twist, but this really reminds me of a like B movie from years ago called Santa Slays, where Santa was actually a demon who lost a bet with an angel, and had been spending the last 1,000 years delivering gifts because that was the strictures of the bet he made with the angel.
Mm. All right.
Anyway,
Candy canes.
Candy canes.
Every Christmas, something magical happens.
Dear Santa.
When a kid sends a letter to Santa. But Liam.
To Santa.
Is a crappy speller.
This looks like fun.
I mean, to be fair, I have known kids. I think I even wrote. No, actually, I don't think I ever did write a letter to Santa. But I knew kids who misspelled Santa as Satan.
Really?
Yeah, like preschool, dude.
Well, I mean, okay, fair enough, I guess. But that strikes me as a very bizarre spelling mistake, given the very obvious A on the end. But never mind.
Well, two things, Dalton. One, you are incredibly smart from a young age, so I'm sure you could tell the difference. An average child, maybe not. Two, you can't even write. So what? So you really think you're one to judge?
This is fair enough. My penmanship is awful, but in my defense, it's because disabilities fucking suck.
Yeah, but honestly, I could see Jack Black playing a really good Santa Claus. Like if they actually.
He's also probably got the comedic chops to make the mix-up work, too. So I can see why they casted him for this.
Shall we?
Yeah, candy canes.
Candy canes.
Oh, that's putrid.
Thank you.
What do you want?
You summoned me.
Not what I expected.
What'd you expect?
In the movies, the reindeer usually have the antlers, not you.
Kid, are you high?
I'm ready for this.
You lucked out big time.
Okay, yeah, this is funny as fuck. And not to be the weird kid yet again, but I'm gonna anyway. I think that if this happened to me, I would not be complaining as a child. It's similar to the Jack giving the one kid a shrunken head for Christmas thing. Like, my reaction would have been, "This is so fucking cool." Most likely. Anyway, candy canes.
Yeah, one sec.
Yeah.
Oh, I've seen the reverse as a joke. Santa shows up in a pentagram, wondering what is going on. Satan checks the spelling and says something like, "Oops, sorry, wrong number."
Really? Okay, is this more of a trope than I'm aware of? Because I've never heard of this. I can see someone like fucking around with summoning and winding up sent like that is it reminds me of that one animated short film Maddie where she like sells her soul and summons like the demon familiar, and the demon familiar can't do any of the things that she wants it to do because hell matched her with an ideal demon for her purposes, and she really just needed one that was cute, because all she needed really was a friend.
That sounds familiar. I don't think I ever did.
Of course, this summoning, by the way, when she successfully summons the demon familiar, it hands her a little like notice of like, please do not reply to this automatically generated message. No returns, and we do not accept refunds. So, assuming that she sold her soul for this, she sold her soul for possibly the cutest demon ever, and no refunds. Derp.
Alright.
Candy cane.
Drantro says, Dawn, the little Lord of Darkness and Evil shows up. Hello, would you like some tea?
I mean, yeah, it's not like it wouldn't happen that way. Like, and again, I once again noting that I am the weird occult one. There are demons who I actually would consider it okay to hang out with. Like, I've genuinely considered asking the Eastern Duke Elagos for a love spell on occasion. I haven't done it yet because I'm not stupid, and therefore, if I ever do make a deal with a demon, I want to make sure it's a demon that I can actually get along with.
Alright.
Candy canes.
Candy canes.
I'm way better than Santa. Ho, ho, frickin' ho! You, my friend, are getting 3 wishes.
You mean like a genie?
They stole that from me. By the way, after you make your wishes, I'm taking your soul.
What?
You ain't never had a friend like me. Okay, that I may have stolen from Aladdin. Now we're even. Let me show you a few of the things.
Okay, it's funny to me, as somebody who actually knows the lore on this, that the devil in this case says that genies stole that from him, because in Islam, jinn and demons are sort of either the same thing or very heavily interchangeable. So that's funny to me. It's literally a part of the setup that only somebody like me would notice. But fuck it, I'm giving them credit for it. Even if they did it by accident, I'm still giving them credit for it. God damn it.
Yeah, okay, so I remember a lot of people saying this looked like shit. And honestly, I'll say that. Hold on. You remember the thing about you being worried about being the guy who dies first in a horror movie? Darn, is starting to sound like the guy who kicks off the horror movie. Oh, he's always going to be the guy who kicks off the horror movie. Let's be fully honest.
In fairness, I'm equally as likely to be the guy they call at the end of the second act who cleans up the mess they made because they fooled with something they shouldn't have. Like that is the role I normally cast myself in. I'm the occult expert they call in at the end of the second act to fix the problem that they wouldn't need to fix if they hadn't been stupid in the first place.
So, but I will say this, like, getting back to the trailer. Yes, it looks dumb, but does that make it any less enjoyable? Because I've watched some dumb movies, and I've still had a good time with them.
Yeah, no, this looks like the fun kind of over the top and silly. And again, not for nothing, but if this happened to me as a kid, I wouldn't be complaining. I'd be somewhat flummoxed about the whole your soul thing, but in fairness, the devil do as the devil do. So honestly, if they hadn't mentioned the soul thing, I would call bullshit. Even though in actual demonology, most demons don't give a shit about your soul, and that proviso is always going to be there.
I mean, look, to be fair, and I'm not too sure. Given my whole Christianity thing, I'm still believing that the soul has some merit for demons or whatever.
Well, I mean, it does in the sense that they can like extract service from you in the afterlife or whatever the fuck, but it's not. It's not like in fucking Supernatural where they're like just harvesting souls for energy and shit.
That's not what I meant. That's not what I meant. I just meant. That's that. Yeah. No, I didn't mean it like that. I just meant.
Mhm.
I don't know. It's like maybe. Okay. Weirdly enough, I could see like some type of tally mark on a board of like wins hell and heaven have against each other.
Yeah, the like fucking the soul based statistics.
Yeah. It's
And
all.
now I'm just imagining like the demonic economy being like, well, souls used to be worth more than they are now because there's too many fucking people and too many souls. So the value of individual souls has gone down relative to like the universal economic scale or some shit.
Well, I'm also thinking that demons aren't as interested because, to be fully honest, we humans don't give too much of a crap about our souls these days.
I mean, this is also true.
As sad as a fact as that is.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, no, this looks fun. Stupid fun, but fun nonetheless.
Right, and I can tell Jack Black is having a fucking ball playing this like comedic devil character.
Yeah. Anyway,
Candy canes.
Candy canes.
I could do for you. I'll be right back.
It's Post Malone. Look, I'm worried Sam is going to trick me into getting my soul.
I think he's just confused.
We believe you.
No.
Okay, this is my least favorite fucking trope in kids' movies. When adults act like the child is going crazy when something obviously weird is happening to them. I don't know how I would rather see this plot go, but it's just it's always been one of my biggest pet peeves of kids' movies is stop fucking writing the adults as morons. Or at least give them a reason not to believe the kid if they're gonna be so pig ignorant as to just not believe the kid in all circumstances. I hate the adults are not helpful in kids' movies because they're too stupid to realize that shit is actually happening. Shtick.
Right. No, hey, I mean, I do think souls are worth a lot, Giant Turtle. It's a whole it's complicated. It's one, I don't know the metaphysical value that a soul actually has, but I mean, it has to be important in some form or regard, given all the stories regarding deals made with spirits often require some type of payment, such as a soul.
Again, usually the payment is something that the negotiators work out, and it's almost never soul related. In fact, I've literally heard of cases where some edgy goth little shit tries to get somebody to show them how to make a soul contract, and then the demon shows up and is like, your soul's not good to me. The services you might render to me with the use of it might be something of use to me, but the soul by itself is almost worthless. which I always find is funny.
All right, that actually is a good point, General. How often do kids make stuff up? How often does literal Satan come to Earth, especially for a random kid? I think it makes sense even before you get to Rudolph-style denial.
But it's one of those things that bug me when it bugged me, especially as a kid, because like it leaves you with this impression that you just simply cannot tell adults things, and it would be helpful if just one time, the parents actually did believe the kid and tried to help them. It's just one of those tropes that really gets under my skin and annoys me and always has. But I'm not saying there's no utility to that trope. I wish they would come up with better. I wish they wouldn't have such a almost universal reliance on it.
I can see that. Anyway, Candy Canes?
Candy canes.
Yo, down here! What are you waiting for? Go make a move! Sue me, I'm thirsty.
I tried everything. That kid's incorruptible.
What about doing something out of kindness?
I don't even know what you just said. I mean, I know all the words, but I just never heard them in that order.
Okay, that's funny. Which now that I'm seeing how much of a smartass this kid is, I kind of want him to turn the tables somehow. Like maybe he ends up tricking him at the end, and the devil winds up being his familiar or something. Again, maybe this is me being weird and being me, but
Yes.
I kind of want to see the Uno reverse thing happen here. Because I don't think they're gonna go the sentimentalist redemption arc for the devil thing. Like the devil starts to care about the kid and lets him off with a freebie and whatnot. But like, I could see now, realizing how much of a smartass this kid is. I could see the kid getting clever at the last second and turning the tables on him, which would be fun. Kind of like Clive Barker's short story, The Yattering and the Jack.
Yeah.
where a demon is sent to tempt this one dude because the dude is like the son of a witch, and the guy tricks the demon into breaking one of hell's rules, which is that you can't touch a damned soul until they are actually damned. And of course, he basically annoys the demon with kindness, so much so that the demon ends up clawing him, and then the demon is basically contracted to be his slave forevermore because he broke the rule.
Alright.
I don't know if they will go quite that route with this, but it would be fun if they did.
Alright. Jack.
Mhm.
Candy canes.
Candy cans.
You know this man?
I'm his uncle. Beat it.
Who do you think you are talking to me like that? Oh,
That doesn't sound right.
pardon me, kombucha.
Watch this.
Lock. No, please, never trust a thought. You just get.
I'm not gonna lie, it's like a little chuckle out of me.
Yeah, I think this movie or this show, I don't know which it is, has potential
It's a
to
movie.
be fun. Okay, it is a movie. So yeah, this movie has potential to be fun, and Jack Black is usually comedically on point regardless, and I think he's having a literal hell of a time. But I'm Ching playing this character, so looks like fun.
Yep.
This reminds me of a movie called I Was a Teenage Faust, where a like nerdy kid in high school accidentally sells his soul to a demon, and then he ends up tricking the demon because of the way the contract was written. He like makes a contract out of a like ad in the back of a comic book that says money back guaranteed, and so he forces the demon to abide by that restriction because he agreed to it. It's fun.
Alright.
Gambled and lost.
Nice to meet you. The pleasure was mine.
Came out November 25th.
And I don't know if we have Paramount Plus or not, so I don't know if I can go and watch it. I shall sort that out shortly after the stream. Anyway, on to Red One, which is also already out because it came out like a month ago.
On my birthday.
Yeah.
Which I actually saw on my birthday, so.
Cool. I'm hoping I can convince somebody to go with me to see Wicked as long as that movie is out, but I don't think anyone in my household is going to want to. I actually just finished the book recently, and I'm curious how they do. I know they changed a bunch of shit from the book because the book was a lot more adult than the musical, but it still has the potential to maybe be fun.
Right. Yeah, so it's the second official trailer because it's the one that came out most relatively recently, 2 months ago.
Mhm.
So yeah, I saw it, and I'm not gonna lie, Dalton and I are gonna review it next week because Dalton still needs to see it.
Yep.
So, but
And I'm
I
still
figured
getting
we
the
at least,
I'm still getting the buffering wheel of death, so I'm gonna have to jump out and jump back in again.
but my general thoughts on the movie, I liked it for what it is. Yeah, it's not a bad movie. Can't really think of. Yeah, it's just a genuinely good, fun movie.
Okay. I can see things now, so success.
All right. Hello?
Hello.
Hello?
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Can you hear me? Okay. Yeah, I
Yes.
can hear you. All right.
Okay.
So yeah, we're gonna be watching this first trailer for Red One, and like I said, next week we will, after Dawn's seen it,
Mhm.
we'll do a review of it,
Okay. Excellent.
and you can see the trailer and stuff.
Yes, everything is cleared up now.
All right. Candy canes.
Candy canes.
Rocking around the Christmas tree at the Christmas party hop. This will go on where you can see every couple time.
I don't really have a comment yet.
No, it's just all really set up.
Yep. Candy canes.
Candy canes.
Hi, Jack.
And this will kind of be something I want to get more into in the review, like next week. But for one thing, I like how the trailer doesn't really like. It's the second one, obviously, but
Mhm.
it doesn't really. It's already gets you. It jumps you in to
Mhm.
the stuff.
In
Rather,
media res, as they say. Yeah.
okay. Instead of like building it up. To be fair, it's supposed to be like a hook for it. So,
Mhm.
but yeah, that's about it. To be honest, doesn't really get into anything until just now. So,
Candy canes.
candy canes.
Who plays?
Welcome to the North Pole.
Come again?
Last night, Red One, also known as St. Nicholas of Myra, was abducted.
Are you saying Santa Claus has been kidnapped?
You're the best tracker in the world. You're gonna help us find him.
I work a
Okay, so they're actually straight leaning into the historical Saint Nicholas then.
He's played by, for one thing, J.K. Simmons as Santa Claus. Cool.
Interesting. I have lore related questions now, but okay.
Yeah, honestly, okay, if they were supposed not to be that guy, but it actually would be cool if they actually did a more historically
if-
accurate by
If you're
making him
if you're go-
making a
yeah,
Turkish guy.
if you're gonna play the historical Santa Claus card, then he needs to be Turkish, because that's who Nicholas of Myra was. He was a bishop of what was Asia Minor, which is now modern day Turkey.
I mean, you can make the you can make the argument. I mean, like, okay, if it's supposed to be like magic and stuff, which is a thing, his visits could change over time.
This is also true, but then the name drop becomes complicated.
Yeah, that's fair.
Frankly, I would have just done the thing that the Santa Claus did of like different people have worn the mantle over time and stuff.
Mhm.
But yeah, now I have lore related questions.
Anyway,
Candy canes.
long. You used to. I'm not gonna like you. I can tell right away. Out of everyone here, I like you the least. Garcia?
What the hell?
Shall we do the thing? I'm afraid we're gonna have to.
You're mine until we find him.
Oh, God.
I suggest you get.
I like how it's not really. It feels like it's kind of taking itself seriously, right?
Mm-hmm.
Given all the movies I have, like they have these premises that can be serious,
Mm-hmm.
but they never do. I kind of like how they're doing that. I don't know. Maybe that's just me.
Yeah, sorry, I was reading Dragon Turtle's comment there.
What do you? Okay. I can't really explain much because there's like a less. I'm gonna say this, just kind of a spoiler thing, but I'm keeping it in
Okay.
like broad strokes as I can with the movie. It
Okay.
actually has like some really interesting world building for the whole world
Okay.
of world.
So there are answers to mine and Dragon Turtle's questions. They're not just lampshaded.
No.
Okay, that's good then. I'm fine waiting for the lore as long as I know there is lore to wait for. But I don't know why I wasn't expecting them to actually go deep enough into the lore to actually answer these questions.
And to answer your question, Dragon Turtle, they are not elves. Well, not the traditional elves we know, and no, Dal, not the more lore accurate elves. They use the
That's a shame.
use the terminology elf. It's an acronym for something. I can't remember off the top of my head.
Okay, so it's kind of like a Santa Claus with an E meets Prep and Landing kind of logic.
Yes.
Okay. That makes at least some sense of
They
things.
also have
Although
connection to a kind of organization that is kept. I can't remember. Morad, I believe it was.
okay.
Which is supposed to like kind of keep the magical and mythical side of the world in balance with with just the mundane world.
Okay, so there's a reason why the magical shit is hiding then. Okay, that makes it better slightly. Although once in my freaking life, I would like to see Santa employ a she lord or two, or maybe be employed by a she lord or something like.
I know, buddy.
Because elves should be closer to Tolkien than they should be to Thimbletack, but never mind.
All right. Candy canes?
Yeah, candy canes.
They're going.
God! We doing some last minute Christmas shopping?
Toy stores.
Toy stores, what?
The supply closets are portal stations for the North Pole transit system. Grab a car. We're gearing up.
Okay, that's an interesting detail. Like, interdimensional toy robbery is apparently a thing, and I'm okay with that.
What?
Because the supply closets of toy stores are portals to the North Pole thing. That essentially means that the quote unquote elves probably steal from toy suppliers rather than actually making shit.
No, they do. They're just so they can get around the entire world.
Okay, that's honestly, I think doing it my way would have been less convoluted, but okay. Or doing it the way I suggested just now would have made more sense, but okay, never mind.
Candy canes?
Candy canes.
How did...
I adjusted it to reality.
And does that...
No, it doesn't work on everything. No, you can't try it. No, you can't drive. No more questions. Now get in. Whoever took Nick. They're extremely dangerous.
Okay. This is interesting.
See, I want to mention who the villain is for your sake, Dalton, because I think you'd like it.
Okay.
But I want to keep that a secret until you watch the actual movie.
Okay, fine.
Just because I feel like, to be fair, I would love to see your reaction to it, but
Well, you will here in about a week or so, probably.
yeah.
I'm assuming it's another mythological figure of some description.
Yes. That's all.
My gut guess would be Boogeyman, but I don't know. Okay.
Shall we?
Yep. Candy canes.
Candy canes.
I think if you don't need me here, I might just go back to the car.
We are 24 hours to Christmas.
We need to find him. Let's save Christmas. Say it.
I'm not going to say that.
Oh, please, it's got to be everyone's dream to say something that cool. No, that wasn't a pun.
But I'm Tish anyway.
Candy canes?
Candy canes.
Things are about to get real. Cover us.
Again, yeah, it's dumb fun. You know, it's classic. It's a Christmas action movie.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, there's no way it could possibly be stupider than Jingle All the Way, so...
Hey, Jingle All the Way is pretty fucking good.
I think I've only ever watched it once, because I didn't really like it much when I watched it.
But you are an aristocratic... You are an aristocratic, snobby bastard. Let's be fully honest on that part.
This is also true. I'm just saying. I watched it once when I was like maybe 5 or 6, and I didn't like it much.
All right.
Though it did stick out enough in my memory that I do still remember most of it.
All right. Shall we?
Candy canes.
Candy canes.
We got snowmen!
Okay, so wait,
It
it's
was
the
nice to
villain.
meet you, Cal. Good luck with
Is the villain the abominable snowman then? Maybe.
No.
Okay. Am I warmer or colder?
Colder. Well, okay. It has something to do with a mountain, has something to do with cold, and it is related to winter lore.
Okay, so Krampus maybe would be
No.
a guess.
He is in here.
Gryla. Okay. Gryla maybe?
God damn it.
So I got it.
I mean, you got it after 3 tries, so.
Okay, in my defense, most people probably wouldn't even have thought of Gryla on their own. Because I was leaning on Gryla as soon as you said it had something to do with a mountain, because in the oldest versions of Gryla, she's also associated with the Jotun Skadi, and Skadi is associated with mountaintops.
Okay, to answer your question, Drantro, Gryla, or I thought it was Grilla.
No, Gryla is usually how it's pronounced.
Okay. Gryla is a witch who lived on
or a troll in the older versions.
Fair enough. Yeah, a troll or a witch who lived. It's Slavic, right?
Slavic and Nordic.
Okay, Slavic, Nordic.
Yeah. You can find her in most Eastern European countries in some form or other.
Okay, Slavic or Nordic lore in the northern regions lived on a mountain, had, I believe, 12 children or sons. It was sons, right? 12 sons.
Yeah, 12 sons, the Yule lads.
Yeah, Yule lads. To be fair, my knowledge only really of Gryla is from the Sabrina Yule episode.
Yeah, and they kind of nerfed her by making her just a witch in that one, which I'm kind of annoyed at. But in there's some speculation among folklorists she might actually be a version of Skadi, the winter Jotun, sometimes referred to as the goddess of winter, even though she was most heavily associated with mountaintops and so on. But anyway, she's basically kind of a female Krampus in some sense, in the way that she kind of fills the opposite role as Santa, in the sense that she punishes the like wicked or misbehaving children, etc., and so on. And that I believe the lore explanation is any child who didn't get given new clothes for Christmas would arouse Gryla's wrath in the original, like, Slavic and Nordic versions, but I could be mistaken. There are a couple dark Yuletide figures in a lot of European lore, and they kind of borrow a lot from each other.
Yeah. Again, it's interesting. Like, it does incorporate some smaller, some niche lore of, like, the winter festivals and stuff, while still it's just an interesting world, to be fair.
I
that they crafted.
yeah, I gotta give them props for even knowing who Gryla was. Although I imagine some knowledge of her increased because of the aforementioned Sabrina Yule episode.
It's funny enough, the actress, I believe it is the actress who played Sabrina, is playing Gryla.
Kiernan Shipka?
Actually, hold on, let me look it up.
Or do you mean the old Sabrina actress, Melissa Joan Hart from?
Hold on. Yeah, Kiernan Shipka.
Okay, it is very much a small world after all, apparently. Fuck, that's kind of badass. Now that you mention that, that's cool.
I knew the
I
when I was watching it, I knew the actress looked familiar. I just couldn't remember.
does she still look very young? Because she strikes me as one of those actresses who doesn't age much.
Yes,
I've seen her in other things, and she always ends up looking young.
but yeah. Again, I'm not gonna talk too much about it, just because it's a stupid movie, but it's a fun movie.
Which, I mean, The Rock does kind of specialize in those sort of semi-comedic action movie type roles.
I won't disagree, to be honest.
Although, as long as we're in the world is a very small, interconnected place territory, I kind of wish, now knowing that Kiernan Shipka is playing Gryla, I kind of wish they had gotten Pierce Brosnan to play Santa Claus in this version, because that would have been a nice nod to Black Adam while we're making references to things. And Pierce Brosnan just has the potential to play a really cool Santa Claus, regardless of my need to see Dr. Fate and things.
A very sophisticated Santa, I would say, actually.
Well, I like when the versions of Santa that are very posh and shit, though. I've always really liked that type of Santa Claus.
I'm gonna be honest. I don't think I've ever seen a Santa Claus depicted like that. Mostly, I've just seen him very humble, down to earth.
Examples of when Santa was a posh fucker or adjacent to a posh.
You know what? Actually, let's do this. Let's do this Okay, our 2 ideas of Santa Claus. Let's do those as top 5 list next week.
I feel like we've done that one year already.
No, we've done our favorite Santas, but we've never done
from different things, because I do remember doing a Santa related top 5.
Yeah,
before.
we've done our top 5 favorite Santas in movies or something, or interpretations, but I don't think we ever talked about our favorite type of Santa before.
This is also true. We can, yeah. Okay, so you want to do that next week or the week after?
We can do that next week. We don't really. I mean, we have what, one or two things for next week.
Yeah, I'll keep searching up articles. And
okay.
Shit. And we do still have the one we skipped from this week too. So
yeah. But anyway.
So Red One review, Santa top 5, and the article we skipped from this week is we're up to 3. There are 2 more slots.
Yeah. Anyway, with that, folks, I want to say, actually, okay, Grant did ask this question. I feel like he would be able to answer this. Don, is Grilla, basically Norse Baba Yaga?
She has less utility than Baba Yaga does, because Baba Yaga shows up all the time in Slavic myths. But whereas Gryla is mostly associated with winter solstice related shit, and of course post Christianity Christmas. Again, she is similar to Baba Yaga in a stylistic sense. Gryla is what would happen if Krampus and Baba Yaga had a daughter, is I guess the best way of putting it.
Anyway, with that, folks, I want to say goodbye, adios, aloha, avideze, sayonara, peace, cheers, and
Have a jolly holly fuck off.